Yeah, very special. Good morning to you. Newsroom, yes. Myself and Kendall will be with you for the entire 3 hours today. As Elvis is he's still recovering from a small little procedure. He'll be back with us a little bit later in the week. Of course, today is also World Environmental Day. World Environment Day.
Yeah, absolutely. Very interesting topic we've chosen for today to start the weekend off with.
Yeah, World Environment Day. We're not talking about that. Our focus today is healthcare on the African continent. That's what we're looking at. Yes, we always talk about healthcare being a basic human right. But why is it so expensive? That's the question that we're popping up to you today. Why has it become so expensive, unaffordable, proper healthcare for the majority of people on the planet, Kendall?
Yeah, no, we'd really hope that we're able to get comments from you on this particular topic. I think it touches everybody in terms of how we run and live our lives.
Yeah, we also have a news question or a poll, as we always run a poll. The poll talks about, well, sovereignty in South Africa and the question around criminals being deported. Do criminals have more rights than us? Us that don't do crime in the street. Some people say that. So should all foreign criminals be deported?
Very interesting that we've received some just under 60 votes, but 90% of the respondees say yes, they should be deported.
Yeah, I think it's a straight up one. This one from Siga, who says they should serve their time first, be banned from entering the country and then deported, he says.
And then Siafana Zulesho says, yes, that's a good idea. Hashtag foreign policy.
Yeah, keep tweeting us at SABC Newsroom also. Of course, Sports Question Monday. It's been a cracking sporting weekend. And how can we look past the achievements of this man? A lot happened this weekend, but is he the greatest of all time, or should he be mentioned in that conversation?
There's no reason why we should not be asking that question. This man has done wonders for both Portugal as well as Real Madrid, having won back-to-back titles most recently and scored the greatest number of goals in Europe for his club. And that's why we're asking that question.
Is Cristiano Ronaldo the greatest of all time? Well, tweet us what you think. We'll be running it throughout the 3 hours. Time now, though, for us to take a look at our top stories.
Alex Mutapo says, good things are expensive.
As Child Protection Week ends, Cape Town police have appealed to the public for information in their investigation into the murder of yet another child. Former Eskom boss Brian Molefe is going to the Labour Court today to challenge the Eskom board's decision to fire him. And Lesotho's former Prime Minister Tom Tabane's All-Basotho Convention is leading the polls in that country's election. And abroad, Saudi Arabia, Egypt, Bahrain and the United Arab Emirates have cut diplomatic ties with Qatar, accusing it of destabilizing the region. Well, those are your top stories right now. Let's go over to Kendall for sport.
Evan, thank you very much. Quite a lot happening in the world of sports. We started the weekend on Friday thinking it's going to be a big one, and you know what? It lived up to the hype. Good morning to you. This is what we've got for you in the sports today.
This could be the fourth wicket. It should be. JP Duminy settles and takes it comfortably.
The Proteas huff and puff to a 96-run victory over Sri Lanka in their ICC Champions Trophy opener.
The South Africans, they turned the screws through some good fielding, some wonderful bowling from Imran Tahir.
Modric, Ronaldo!
Inspired by Cristiano Ronaldo brace, Real Madrid become the first club to win back-to-back UEFA Champions League titles with a 4-1 thumping of Juventus.
Madrid, UEFA Champions League winners 2017, just as they were in 2016.
And Bomu Samtembu wins the Comrades Marathon in Pietermaritzburg, becoming only the first South African runner to win 2 titles since Bruce Fordyce in 1990. South African mountain biker Greg Minnaar, the most successful downhill racer of all time, with a record 7th UCI Downhill Cup title in Scotland.
It was a hard race. You know, the rain made it a bit tough. Not necessarily on the ground, but, you know, coming just before the deer gate, I couldn't actually see where I was going.
Now, all this and more we've got for you later on the Sports Bulletin right about 10:40 or so. For now, it's back to Eben who's got the news.
Yeah, thank you very much, Kendall. Very good morning to you. At the end of Protection Week, this is really disturbing. Cape Town Police have now appealed to the public for information in their investigation into the murder of yet another child. The body of 5-year-old Meningitis Lekata was found yesterday afternoon under a bridge in Broadway. She was last seen on Saturday afternoon while playing outside a house in the Nomzamo informal settlement. Little Meningitis was found on the last day of Child Protection Week.
Little ones, often described as priceless gifts, needing physical, emotional and psychological protection. But society is failing them. Most of the suspects are well known to the victims. 14-month-old Lindokuhle Koda was allegedly killed by her father.
I'm still confused. I don't believe that my child is late, and I don't believe that it's the daddy that did this bad thing to her. I'm still caught in the middle. It's because I was with him the time the baby was at his house. He treated the baby very well. Even when I was not around, I knew that my baby was safe.
Communities say they need more social workers and drug rehabilitation centers.
We've been crying for a very long time. We've been suffering for a very long time. But our cry was never heard. It was the cry of Courtney Peters in that dark room where that terrible man was doing terrible things to her that brought you here, Mr. President.
Experts say the moral fiber of society needs to be restored.
We have a man who violates their children, his child. But that is founded on the system that says fathers, that men are entitled to women and children's bodies, literally. Not in the sense of rape or killing them, but in the sense that I literally own you. I own your body. You are my child.
Courtney Peters, Lindokuhle Koda, Iyapha Yamile, and many others paid the highest price. Their graves bearing testimony to a failed society. Nomawethu Solwandle, SABC News, Cape Town.
Yeah, the number is 19 children killed in the Western Cape alone since the beginning of the year. Moving on, the presidency has denied media reports that President Jacob Zuma owns a palace in Dubai. The denial follows reports in Sunday newspapers that the Gupta family allegedly bought the 330 million rand mansion for the president. The information is allegedly contained in one of the thousands of leaked emails that are believed to have originated from the Gupta family. Meanwhile, the SACP has once again called for a commission of inquiry into state capture.
Yet more explosive revelations. A 330 million rand Dubai home said to have been procured for President Jacob Zuma through Gupta channels 2 years ago. Around the same time, the president's son, Duduzane, allegedly bought a nearby upmarket apartment. Reports suggest Duduzane has a resident permit for the United Arab Emirates. He has rubbished these claims as a fabrication. Zuma does not own any property outside South Africa and did not ask anybody to buy property for him abroad. In another report, Gupta-linked Oakbay Investments is alleged to have received a SARS tax refund. It claims SARS officials deemed the 70 million rand payout to be illegal, but were strong-armed by Commissioner Tom Moyane into making the transfer. SARS says it cannot comment on the allegations. It says Section 69 of the Tax Administration Act prohibits it from divulging any information on taxpayers. He has weighed in again.
The scale of corporate capture and of parasitic plundering of public resources by the Gupta network becomes more and more evident. Sadly, and even more concerning, the central role of President Zuma and his son in this auctioning off our national sovereignty is also increasingly apparent.
On Friday, the ANC also called on government to urgently establish the veracity of claims in the leaked Gupta emails. It also wants a judicial probe into state capture allegations expedited. On Sunday, an ANC subcommittee wouldn't be drawn on the latest revelations. SABC News, Johannesburg.
The ANC's Peace and Stability Subcommittee has refused to comment on the leaked Gupta emails, but says cyber security must be beefed up. The subcommittee held a media briefing over the weekend ahead of the party's policy conference later this month. It also called for foreign nationals in South African prisons to be transferred to their home countries. The subcommittee says foreigners behind bars are costing the taxpayer close to R1 billion a year.
The policy discussion document details that there are some 6,400 foreigners in the country's prisons, each costing the state 360 rand a day.
This puts a heavy burden on the already strained fiscus. This is made more serious by the nature of crimes committed by foreign nationals, as 4 in 10 of the 6,440 foreign nationals has committed aggressive crimes, which include murder and attempted murder.
However, in the exchange program proposal lies a potential constitutional problem. What if the convicted offender's country doesn't meet the minimum standards for prisons as per South African laws?
We hope that in the process we would be able to arrive at some form of arrangements or other which would facilitate our ability to exchange prisoners, at least to those countries who are willing to uphold some of the norms and standards that we ourselves uphold in our own countries.
And in several cases, the judiciary has found against the executive. The most recent, the High Court ruling that President Jacob Zuma should submit records and reasons for his March cabinet reshuffle. These have led to concerns on judicial overreach and the separation of powers. The subcommittee believes judicial overreach will remain a contentious issue. Aldrin St-Pierre, SABC News, Johannesburg.
Yes, some interesting discussion points there. So we've been asking you this question on this Monday morning with regards to that announcement. Now, should all foreign criminals in our prisons be deported back to their home countries? That's the question we're asking you. They're costing us up to R1 billion a year. Now, we've got 85 votes in, and you guys are telling us it's a no-brainer. More than 90% of the votes are saying, yes, send them back to their home countries. What do you guys do? Nozi Gomede tweets us this and says, absolutely agree. First, make sure they don't come back with a different passport. Chira says, yes, they should be deported so that they can try to respect our laws and its citizens. Remember, our laws are too lenient. Perry Martin says, yes, all foreign criminals should be deported because the majority of them are illegal here and are high-profile criminals, says Barry Martin. Interesting. Keep tweeting us, of course. We're also running a question, of course, on healthcare and why healthcare is so expensive. Don't forget to tweet us on the question and on the poll today. But former Eskom boss Brian Molefe is going to the Labour Court today to challenge the Eskom board's decision to fire him. In his court papers, Molefe says his dismissal was unlawful and should thus be treated as invalid. Papers have been served on the Power, Utility and Public Enterprises Minister Lynn Brown.
We received court papers from him. So he's challenging the lawfulness of his dismissal. That is the extent of the matter in a nutshell. So our lawyers then are looking at those papers with a view to, depositing our response at court.
Now, a group of EFF supporters have started arriving at the Bloemfontein Magistrates Court this morning. Now, Julius Malema is accused of contravening the Riotous Assemblies Act after he called on EFF members to occupy vacant land. The civil rights organisation AfriForum lodged a complaint after Malema made the remarks during the party's elective conference at the Free State University in 2014. Malema is challenging the charges against him. He says the Riotous Assemblies Act of 1956 is an apartheid-era law that needs to be challenged because it's illegal. With 33 constituencies out of 80 now official, former Prime Minister Tom Tabane's Albasuti convention is leading the election there with 27. This was expected as the party enjoys support in the capital, Maseru, and other urban areas. Deputy Prime Minister Montejoa Metsing was meanwhile retained the Mahobong constituency but lost in Tabana Morena.
Are eagerly awaiting the outcome of the country's general election, and with counting done at some stations, results are slowly trickling in. The IEC has reassured the nation that the results will be delivered as dictated by the law.
We are expecting that the final outcome of the elections will be on Tuesday at the latest, because according to the law, we have to announce the final results before 7 days.
As for Lesotho nationals, they too are anxiously awaiting the final outcome.
I'm really excited because actually we've been in crisis of this politics.
We want a 5-year government, so I'm very anxious, and I believe that the government that we will have is a very strong one that will complete the whole term.
Despite comments of a lower voter turnout, citizens are optimistic that a new government that will be announced will hold on to its 5 full-year term. Lehana Tsotetsi, SABC News, Maseru, Lesotho.
Now, international news. Saudi Arabia, Egypt, the United Arab Emirates and Bahrain have severed their ties with Qatar. The 3 Gulf states have accused Qatar of supporting terrorism in an unprecedented breach between the most powerful members of the Gulf Cooperation Council. The coordinated move dramatically escalates a dispute over Qatar's support of the Muslim Brotherhood, the world's oldest Islamist movement, and adds accusations that Doha even backs the agenda of regional arch-rival Iran. The 3 Gulf states announced the closure of transport ties with Qatar and gave Qatar visitors and residents 2 weeks to leave their countries. Qatar was also expelled from a Saudi-led coalition fighting in the Yemen. A split between Doha and its closest allies can have repercussions around the Middle East, where Gulf states have used their financial and political power to influence events in Libya, Egypt, Syria, Iraq, and the Yemen. Qatar is also due to host the World Cup in 2022.
I'm Alicia Jali, joining us live from our Johannesburg studios. A quick look now at your current news leaders. Parliament's Communications Committee has decided on 5 names to sit on the SABC's interim board. And the Constitutional Court has directed Social Development Minister Bathabile Dlamini and her department to account for their handling of the social grants contract.
And in tennis, Serena Williams has withdrawn from the BNP Paribas Open in Indian Wells and the Miami Open due to a left knee injury.
We're expecting it to move just in the towards the southern parts of the country, not so much coming towards southern Africa, not even touching the Mozambique channel. It's just going to move back towards the Indian Ocean.
Stay tuned to News Today, Monday to Friday from 3 to 5:30 p.m.
Welcome back here with Newsroom here on SABC News. Now, healthcare in Africa, that's our focus, and it's still a major concern as a lack of access to basic healthcare facilities and medication leads to continuous outbreaks in many diseases such as HIV and AIDS, TB and malaria even. This week, 9,000 healthcare professionals from across the African continent will convene at the Gallagher Centre here in Johannesburg for the 7th Annual Africa Health Exhibition and Congress. The 7th Annual Exhibition and Congress includes discussions at 13 accredited conferences covering issues affecting the continent's healthcare landscape. These include a focus on Africa's response to emerging health threats, managing health technology, building sustainable hospital infrastructure, maternal health, non-communicable diseases, and controlling disease outbreaks. The event brings together more than 540 healthcare suppliers, manufacturers, and service providers who will exhibit the latest developments in medical science. Of course, that's why we ask you the question today. Our question today, well, healthcare, it's a basic human right, isn't it? Oh, that's what we are told, or that's what's written in our constitutions. But why is it so unaffordable for the vast majority of people? And we're talking about the best healthcare, that is. Cradle tweets us and says, it's a business opportunity, especially to private GPs and hospitals. It costs 450 Rand for a consultation, and if you don't have medical aid, you will suffer. Malibongwe says, Newsroom, it's because public hospitals are failing to give people a good healthcare service, so private hospitals are taking advantage of that. This one from Madilake Jonto, who says, yes, they are costing us millions. Now, of course, we cannot deny that taking care of one's health is of utmost importance, but what do we do when we simply cannot afford even a basic visit to the doctor, to have quality healthcare in hospitals when it's most needed? It seems that the more money you have, the better the quality of your healthcare service and well-being becomes. And this is according to, well, the human rights should not be the case. But South Africa has been in talks about a national healthcare system, as well as lowering the costs of the much-needed medical aids. Now, to talk to us a little bit about this, we are joined in studio by the Board of Healthcare Funders of Southern Africa's Acting Managing Director, Dr. Clarence Meany. Dr. Meany, a very good morning to you, and thank you for being with us.
Good morning, Eben, and thank you.
There's so much ground that we could cover and should cover, really, but talking about a basic human right, why do you tell us has it become so expensive to look after your health in a sort of optimum level?
Eben, the rising healthcare costs have been, first of all, a concern to all those who are in private healthcare, like us. The Board of Healthcare Funders, as you would know, is a membership organization of medical schemes in Southern Africa. Our members are from the 7 SADC countries around Southern Africa. And across the board, in all this region, across the board, we've seen the escalation of healthcare costs. The reason for the escalation is multiple-fold. We have latest drugs that are coming up, like drugs referred to as the biologics, that are new, very effective, but very, very expensive. We've had an aging population that tends to demand hospital care, more intensive and longer stays in hospitals. So there's a variety of causes. But with universal health care, we all feel that we'll be able to go a long way towards alleviating that.
In our lifetime, we'll see that.
We hope so, because the UN, led by its unit WHO, is pushing everybody across the board in the whole world to move towards universal health care. So that, like in South Africa, instead of us only covering 8% of the 16% of the population, we should be able to cover the whole country when universal health care is introduced. Yeah.
The vast majority, at least one would hope, in the medium term. I want to talk about medical aids because it's something that I think we all have this uncomfortable relationship with in South Africa. It's very expensive, as you know, and at times it's difficult to understand, I think, for people who use medical aids. But are we going to see a time, if we talk on the back, before we get to the dream, are we going to see a time where the cost of it maybe comes a little bit down in South Africa?
The Minister of Health has started working on what they call low-cost options to be able to attract more people to be involved in medical aids. This is an interim measure as we are waiting for the magic bullet that is NHI.
Yeah.
We, as the private healthcare industry, want to make our expertise available to the Department of Health to make sure that all the areas in which we've been operating over time, including financing and putting systems, modern systems together to run healthcare, are shared with the Department of Health for the benefit of the whole country.
What are your hopes for the NHI in the short and medium term?
In the short and medium term, with our support, I think, the enthusiasm of the minister that is well known, we think it's a no from the 9 pilot sites. The results coming out is that things have started moving. There are, of course, disturbing trends about resources being depleted, and in some cases, in nefarious ways. And that's the money, in our opinion, that is supposed to be set aside for programs like the NHI.
Let's shift our focus a little bit because we've got this conference going on. I want to talk about Southern Africa, wider Southern Africa, because it seems wider Southern Africa's healthcare problems often become South Africa's healthcare problems. You have an idea of what's happening. Just paint us the picture. What's happening in Southern Africa?
In Southern Africa, the healthcare situation is quite, first of all, we share the same disease burden. We have the same illnesses with people from Mozambique, Zimbabwe, Botswana. And we find that they have very often less resources to cover their populations. And if you go to a hospital like Charlotte Maxeke today, especially on a Monday morning, you'll find many people from Mozambique, from Zimbabwe, coming here to add on the burden that we have already of our very sickly people. So many of the neighboring countries are not doing well in healthcare. We happen, because our membership covers the 7 southern countries, we happen to have an idea as to what is happening there. The situation is not pretty. And it impacts on what we're doing here in South Africa for our own population. So situation is not good.
We've got 9,000 healthcare professionals getting together at Gallagher Estate from today.
Okay, we're going to Cape Town.
Cape Town?
Yeah.
See, this my information is a bit dodgy, isn't it?
Yeah. We are descending on Cape Town on the weekend of the 15th and 16th. The actual conference is starting on the Monday to Wednesday, 16th to the 18th.
The African picture, just how do we improve healthcare, generally speaking, on the entire continent? What do we need to do? Is it a fact that governments have to get together and intervene?
Universal healthcare is the way forward. We cannot afford a situation where only a small percentage of people has all the resources of a country being focused on them. We've got to spread it out. We've got to cover everybody. And it's a human right, as we know. It's declared internationally by the UN, and our constitution concurs. So there's no other way. We don't have a choice in this. We've got to be able to cover everybody in healthcare.
I thank you very much for joining us. That's the Acting Managing Director of the Board of Healthcare Funders of Southern Africa, Dr. Clarence Mini, talking about this basic human right. But we're asking you, if it is that basic human right, why has it become, well, something for the rich, they tell us. It's become very expensive, even basic healthcare. Of course, in South Africa, well, we're underway, working on the NHI, and you heard it. Soon we will have some momentum on it. But you guys are tweeting us with your concerns. Let's just have a look at those tweets. Kadlejo says, it's a business opportunity, no doubt. It costs 450 Rand for a consultation, and if you don't have medical aid, you will suffer, no doubt. This one from Malibongwe says it's because public hospitals are failing to give people a good healthcare service, so private hospitals are taking advantage of that. This one from Marilake Jonto says, yes, they are costing us millions. Millions for sure. Simon tweets us, he says, private medical centres need to be regulated and government should put prices for the private health sector. They will not like that, Simon. Well, let's move on now and take a look at our picture of the day. Of course, it's the Comrades Marathon weekend. It was a fantastic race. And yeah, we have a lovely pic of the women's winner, Camille Herron. Yes, she's an American lady and she won the race. She says, I'm a Comrades race champion. As Bruce Fordyce told me, I will always be part of the club. Thank you to everybody. Yeah, that's a moment she crossed the line winning the women's race yesterday. Now, this is our comment of the day. Yes, and it's that time. We're heading into the time where Dubai, well, they've got robot police now. Can you believe that? There's at least 5 movies telling us how this will end. That's a funny bit for today. If you have robot police, it's not going to end well, they say. Anyhow, let's take a quick roundup of what's happening in the courts. We'll start in Cape Town, where a 40-year-old mother from Philippi on the Cape Flats, who allegedly allowed a common-law husband to rape her 12-year-old daughter in return for groceries, will appear in the Belleville Sexual Offences Court. She faces charges of conspiracy to commit sexual offences and the exploitation of a child for sexual purposes. Then, yeah, in Johannesburg, 4 men arrested in connection with the hijacking and abduction of the Deputy Correctional Services Minister, Thabang Makwetla, will appear in the Randburg Magistrates Court later today. They are facing charges of kidnapping and robbery with aggravating circumstances. Their case was postponed to allow for an identity parade to be conducted. Makwetla was hijacked at the gates of the Life Riverfield Hospital in Johannesburg last month. The incident occurred when Makwetla was driving by himself while visiting ANC stalwart Wally Serote. We'll keep you updated as to how those go in the court today. We're going to take a short break. Newsroom will be back with you shortly.
The fossil hominid site at Sterkfontein Caves, known as Cradle of Humankind, were declared a World Heritage Site on the 2nd of December 1999. The Cradle of Humankind covers an area of over 47,000 hectares of privately owned land northwest of Johannesburg. Most of the site is on dolomite, a rock type which is slightly soluble in water. There are currently over 200 caves on the site and 13 fossil sites. We know that Australopithecus africanus were present in the cradle from about 2 to 4 million years ago. It is generally known that hominids are close relatives of human ancestors.
Today is World Environment Day, and this year the global environmental organizations are encouraging people to reconnect with nature. However, with one of the worst droughts the African continent has ever faced, the importance of water and taking care of our natural environment has never been more vital. In recent years, we've also witnessed the wildlife poaching statistics increase significantly. And now one of the largest countries and polluters in the world, the United States, have just announced that they are pulling out of the Paris Accord. This aims to prevent global warming and other massive environmental catastrophes. Do we no longer care about connecting and protecting nature and its precious wildlife? Here to talk about the importance of this day, as well as giving us some updates on all things Rhino, award-winning television wildlife presenter and filmmaker, Bonnet de Bod. Morning, Bonnet. Nice to have you with us.
Yeah, good morning, Eben.
It's quite a rap we're giving you now.
I like that introduction. Thank you very much.
Seriously, though, I want to start and cut to the chase because I think everyone who cares about the environment was really shocked with the attitude displayed by Donald Trump in America when pulling out of the Paris Accord last week. But it's a real setback for those of us that want to save the planet for future generations.
Right. So let's talk about today. You know, I always find it very strange that we have to have a day to remember the environment, you know, and it's such an important day where we can really refocus the mind to take forward the call to protect the earth that we all share. You know, and it really invites us to think about how we are part of nature and how we depend on it, because I do think we tend to forget that sometimes. Now, the theme for today is connecting people to nature, which I think is very appropriate. You mentioned what happened now in the United States with Donald Trump not agreeing to this agreement, the Paris Agreement. So I think it's important for us today to just appreciate the environment and the beauty that is still left on our planet. So I will be taking time out later today from the edit suite to take a walk in one of our city's parks with my dog and just appreciate the environment and which we find all around us, really. So for those of you who are watching, you know, give a thought to nature today or just go out. Take a couple of minutes out of the office and appreciate the environment. But pretty shocking what happened with Donald Trump pulling out.
Yeah, it is, and it's a major setback for everyone that cares about the environment. But your field of expertise, let's talk about rhinos quickly, because it's almost like they're becoming more and more brazen, the poachers. We've seen what happened at Mfolozi Game Reserve with the poaching of a mother in a holding area.
Right. Very shocking. I think people were very outraged, and I think many people are asking the question, how did this happen? As soon as the news broke, in fact, people were taking to social media to vent their anger. Thousands of people commenting and sharing this incredibly shocking and sad news. You know, Eben, I think the ironic part for me is that this happened in a supposedly secure location at the home of the white rhino, the very place where the white rhino was brought back from the brink of extinction in the 1960s. Now, I did the last interview with Dr. Ian Player there at the Bomas, and he was just so incredibly proud of the history those Bomas held. So just very sad that this had to happen. Now, this mother and calf you referred to, they were part of the wild rhinos that were auctioned, captured and auctioned at the Ezemvelo KZN Wildlife's annual auction, and they were sold as a unit for 520,000 rand. But people are asking, you know, I've been to those Bomas many times, as I've mentioned, also over 2 auctions, and the security has always been tight, you know, with armed guards and video cameras.
Inside job, then? Is that what it smells like?
We have to ask the security question. You know, I don't know if you saw the news reports that came out. They said that Ezemvelo did not give comment. I then contacted the spokesperson. They said they did give comment. And then they emailed me a formal statement outlining as to how this happened in more detail. Basically, 4 armed poachers, heavily armed poachers, disabled 2 security guards that were on the night shift. They were tied up, told to lie down, and then their firearm, radio and a panic button were taken from them before these guys moved in to kill and shoot this mother and calf.
The question that concerns me, and maybe it's a thing that I think we have to extend to everybody, is that can we still trust everyone that's looking after our rhinos, because a lot of the rhino crime seems to be very close to rhinos themselves.
That's a very important question to ask. You know, I think what we must remember is that there are many people on the ground doing amazing work. We can't generalize.
Yeah.
But corruption has infiltrated throughout the system, like in any other industry, basically. What I find very interesting is the fact that if you look at the protection for this mother and calf, I mean, it's R500,000. You know, despite the other animals in the bomas that were auctioned off. The auction brought in 88 million rand. So people on Facebook are commenting about the lack of protection for these valuable animals, asking how can 2 security guards be responsible for millions of rands worth of wild animals, especially with the carnage happening in KZN lately. So I think what has upset people the most is the fact that this mother and calf were wild rhinos. They couldn't run anywhere. They were held captive in a boma at the mercy of the poachers. So we should have done more to protect them. They were basically sitting ducks.
How were they killed?
They were shot. They were shot. The mother's horn was removed. The baby obviously was also shot and killed, but the horn was still intact.
I don't understand that, honestly. Anyhow, the statistics are not getting any better or worse. I don't know how to view the statistics anymore, to be honest with you. But what does the picture look like now?
Well, like you also said earlier, it's becoming more and more apparent that poachers are getting bolder. You mentioned the Tula rehab attack. Now, this incident, it has certainly taken rhino poaching to a whole new level. Now, you're asking the question, how do we change things around? I always say change is a big word, especially when what we are doing doesn't seem to be working. Now, the Kruger Rangers must be thrilled that their work is really paying off, you know, bring down the poaching numbers in the park. But those in KZN say that because the grip has tightened in Mpumalanga, these criminal syndicates are moving there. They lost 23 rhinos in 12 days at the Sishlui and Mfolozi Reserve. So far this year, 100 rhinos have been poached in KZN, 80% coming from the home of the white rhino. We are dealing with triple figures now, and this is from January up to May.
It shows a level of sophistication with these syndicates, as you call them. It seems as if they target the weaknesses in the system, and that shows a level of sophistication that must be concerning.
Absolutely. So we change one aspect with some success, and it brings chaos somewhere else. What we must remember, rhino poaching, like any other wildlife crime, is a sophisticated, organized criminal activity. It's deeply rooted, yet ever-changing. And it takes advantage of those secretive set structures that we put in place. And that's how we have to approach it. We have to disrupt those networks.
We've seen concerning this weekend also the lions who came to retire in South Africa, the circus lions. 2 of them were killed over the weekend, and it's World Environmental Day today. So how should we get our heads around this day with these kinds of things happening?
You know, we have to again refocus our mind and our responsibility as humanity on this planet. We only have one. You know, there's no planet B. So either we look after it and it is our responsibility, or, well, what are we going to do in 10, 20, 30 years from now? So let's not get to that place. Let's all play our part individually as organizations and you know, make this day what it should be, celebrating our environment.
Bonnie, thank you very much for being with us today. Bonnie Deport, award-winning wildlife television presenter and filmmaker, joining us periodically on the Newsroom show to talk about all things wildlife. Today is World Environmental Day, and what she said a little bit earlier is quite apt, I think. Go out and interact with nature today. Go and have a look at the beautiful colours at this time of year, especially in our parks in and around the big cities. It kind of feels like Monday. A lot of things are not working today, but anyhow, it'll get better. To pick up a little bit of speed here throughout the week. We're conducting a poll while we're talking about, well, legislation before, well, with regards to our constitution. Should all foreign criminals be deported? At the moment, we are not allowed to because our constitution doesn't allow for it. We've got 105 of you voting, and an overwhelming majority say yes. all foreign criminals should be deported. What are you guys tweeting us? Let's have a look at the tweet. Sipo tweets us, he says, yes, they should be deported because if you can check in some old buildings in Joburg, they use our sisters to be prostitutes. Simon Mangana says foreign criminals really need to be deported back to their native countries since they are costing us a lot of money. No doubt about that, he says. A lot of money. Pule Matloko says deportation will be a good threat to foreign criminals. Prison quality, he says, because we don't have effective threats as we speak. Yes, and they're costing us R1 billion. This one from Unuke Christian says, foreign criminals, convict them and deport them. However, not all foreigners are criminal. Yes, Unuke, that is the most important point. Not all foreigners are criminal, but if you are illegally and you break the law, then you are regarded as a foreign criminal. And we ask you, should they be deported? Well, that's what you guys have been telling us. A man who's not a criminal is Kendall Mahamate. It's been a landmark sporting weekend, one of the great sporting weekends on the calendar every 100%. Year. It was Champions League final, and after the Champions League final, of course, all the big conversations get underway. A record 12th title, though, for Madrid. Fantastic work, isn't it?
Yeah, they call it a duodecima. You know, nobody would have said that Real Madrid would be able to win it in 2016 and come back a year later with a new coach at the helm, by the way, Zinedine Zidane, and win it. I think back to back, Zinedine Zidane has shown himself to be the real deal. Because a lot of people were doubting, myself included. Myself included. I thought, you know, he was a flash in the pan, bit of luck to finish off the season. Yeah. But you know what? He's done extremely well to manage all those egos and get this for Real Madrid.
Yeah, he was revered as one of the fine football brains in the world at the time he was playing, and I'm sure it's easy to kind of work with the egos if you are the best player on the planet. These are, of course, this is the main question today, though.
This man here.
Because he's never placed up there with the greatest of all time.
No.
He never is. And Messi is always. You know, he's got a better left foot than Messi. He's better than Messi in the air. He's probably a better all-round footballer than Messi. He's won as much, if not more, than Messi, but he's never in the conversation. What does Mlu say?
Mlu says, I am a Madrid supporter, but even I can admit that Maradona was way greater than Ronaldo.
Yeah, my personal choice is Maradona is the greatest of all time because he won not just the World Cup, but he won Scudetto on one leg with a team of no-hopers. No one has ever done that in football.
You know, Ciro says, no, he's not yet outperformed Luis Nazario de Lima, Ronaldo, on the world stage, unless I'm using the wrong criteria to measure.
Yeah, no, you use the right criteria because you have to win a World Cup with your nation in order. He's the GOAT for those over 30, the greatest of all time, and a legend, and still has a year or two left, he says.
There you go, Cristiano Ronaldo. A point of correction. I agree with most of what you said about Ronaldo, but having a better left boot than Messi.
Well, I mean, the other foot, right foot. Sorry,
right foot,
the other
yes.
foot. I mean, he's got both feet, where Messi is very one-footed.
The one thing I definitely done. Now, and the one thing that Ronaldo has done is that he's actually stood out as, you said it a little earlier, a big match temperament player. Yeah. He's a big match player. He shows up when he needs to, and he shows up in great style. Scoring that goal that actually got secured Madrid's way to the title.
They were under the pump after the equalizer. It was a great equalizer by Mandzukic. This was such a great finish. And then Ronaldo's kind of changed the game again, pitching up in between two defenders when his team really needed, and they were under the pump a little bit, and he put the rubber seal on the game.
One will remember that Juventus are the team that actually, leading into this final, had only had 3 goals scored against them, and they played against Barcelona, they played against AS Monaco, and they got themselves to the point where they were going to get revenge for 1998. But you know what? Ronaldo, Ramos, and the rest of the team had other ideas.
Absolutely, you have to say that this team deserves it. They've probably been the best team on the planet for the last couple of years, and all of that on the back of Ronaldo's form. And again, the conversation about whether he's the greatest of all time is one that even if he's in the top 3 or 4, that's what I'm talking about. You know, kill them off. on the hour mark.
No,
in a
kill him
final,
off.
that's big match play, big match temperament.
Yeah, you could see there, you could see Juventus' head sagging, the old lady stopping to try and sing, and he really did what he needed to do to make sure that his team crosses the line and gets to lift that trophy for the second time in a row. Duodecima. You know, another thing about Ronaldo is that he's breaking records left, right, and centre in La Liga, across the continent.
Goal-scoring records.
Goal-scoring records.
Yeah.
Good records. And even Zinedine Zidane said, you know what, Ronaldo is a more important player than he was in his day because he gets the goals when they need it.
Absolutely, and that's a big statement to make because Zidane will go down as one of the great football men of all time, I would think, because to win back-to-back, to win this title back-to-back, I don't think it'll be done again soon. No. I really don't think so. It's so difficult.
Yeah, just another thing that I think we need to touch on before we let our viewers go to the weather. Greg Minnaar.
Oh, yes.
UCI mountain bike champion, 7th that he's won. He's an all-time great.
20 World Cup titles, you know, he's an all-time great. He's one of the all-time great South African sportsmen, I think. And just the way that he's revered within this fraternity is incredible. He's an absolute legend. And this is the sport that's not for the faint-hearted, Ken. I'll tell you, mountain bike downhill. Thank you for coming.
No, clearly not. And that's exactly why we're showing this to our viewers, because this is mounted on Greg's helmet in round 2 of the title that he won out at Fort William in Scotland. Phenomenal stuff. This man is ramping his way to victory, ramping his way into the history and record books again. And like you say, he's well revered in the mountain biking circles. A South African, true blue South African, doing it on the world stage.
You won't see him on any other back pages of any of the newspapers in South Africa, unfortunately. But here on the Newsroom show, we salute Greg Minnaar today for one of the great performers. 20 World Cup titles now, event titles, 20, unmatched, absolutely unmatched.
Yeah, no, that is definitely unmatched. In fact, reading up on him, you just think, wow, why is this guy not getting an Order of Ikamanga or something like that? Because he's done extremely well for himself as well as the sport in South Africa.
Absolutely. Well, we parade him out when it's time for Olympic hopefuls. That's what we do. Anyhow, we salute you today. Greg Minnaar, fantastic, at 35 years old, to win it in a sport for young people. Unbelievable. Let's go over to the weather next.
Thank you very much. Warm welcome to the weather desk. Let's see what's happening with your latest weather details. Well, the interior is seeing a lot of clear skies starting from the southern parts of the country, stretching north all the way throughout the whole of Angola, Zambia, Malawi into Tanzania. Only expecting isolated showers over the eastern parts of the country. It's a high pressure cell bringing low-level moisture, and with that we're expecting those isolated showers mainly in the afternoon. But tomorrow's weather is a bit different as we're starting to see cloudy weather, especially in the afternoon along the western coastline, and accompanied with it is some isolated showers that may come later on in the afternoon as there's onshore northwesterly flows flow into the western parts of the country. Otherwise, clear skies in the east. As you can see, there's high pressure cell dominating in the eastern parts, stopping any development over the eastern parts of the country. Otherwise, partly cloudy weather is expected in southern parts of the DRC with isolated showers, especially in the extreme northern parts of the DRC. Temperatures today are cool, especially in the southern parts. We're seeing Cape Town peaking at 21, Sutherland at 18, and into the eastern parts we see Durban a bit warm today at a high of 26, with Mbombela at 22, expecting similar conditions as we had yesterday with 24 for Pretoria. Into the north we're still seeing a bit of warmer temperatures, summer conditions in places like Victoria Falls. We're seeing a high of 30. Into places like Maoni we're also seeing a high of 30, Walvis Bay 28, and then the western parts, Nampula, we're seeing a high of 28. So clearly warmer weather, warmer conditions in those areas. Into Madagascar we're seeing a high of 32 in Moroni, and the interior of Madagascar, Antananarivo peaking at 23, seeing summer conditions, a bit of winter and summer mixture in there. And into the northern parts where we're seeing Bangui peaking at 33, very hot. Otherwise, just partly cloudy weather expected over most of the DRC for today. Temperatures peaking at 34 in southern parts of Sudan. And into the north where we're seeing just partly cloudy weather in Niger with some isolated showers expected, especially in the southern parts. Now these showers are very, very isolated, not a lot of rain. It's very dry in these parts of the world. You will see just a lot of rain falling, but not even reaching the ground completely. Looking at Agadir's temperatures, you can see very hot at 43, and in the northern parts we're seeing a bit of cooler conditions, 27 for Tripoli. Also some isolated showers expected in places like Libya. At Cairo, Egypt, we're seeing clear skies with a high of 37, 43 in Khartoum, very hot in those conditions. And into the West Africa, where we see a bit of isolated showers, especially over the coastal areas, seeing Lagos at 29 and Abidjan at 31. Very hot weather is expected. But over the interior, remember, we're seeing those partly cloudy weather and a bit of isolated showers along the coastal areas in places like Tunisia. We're seeing those isolated showers with partly cloudy weather. Otherwise, clear skies over the interior. A bit of cloudy weather in Agadez, into Niamey, into southern parts, into most central parts of Mali. Otherwise, southern parts, we'll see a bit of isolated showers with partly cloudy weather. 36 is expected as a maximum if you're in Bamako, and Dakar at 29. I'll leave your weather here for now. I'll be back with more weather updates. Stay tuned to SABC News.
The Pan-African Parliament, as a legislative body, could go a long way in continuing to promote women's rights in all African member states.
Moon will be elected president. A decisive win by him will provide much-needed stability in South Korea.
The Deputy President and the SADC Oversight Committee have been mandated to convene a multi-stakeholder national dialogue before elections.
5 teams are trapped in the relegation mud. These include Bloemfontein Celtic, 12th on the log, followed by Chipa United, Free State Stars and Baroka, who are second from the bottom, as well as Highlands Park, who have won only 4 matches.
We're on point with breaking stories, detailed economy and sport. Tune into Midday Report every Monday to Friday from 12 p.m.
The Law Society has slammed notices sent to 4 universities to jack up standards or risk losing their LLB courses. The Council on Higher Education issued a stern warning to the universities to conform within 6 months.
I think it will affect the university. I think outside the law faculty, there's a funding issue.
It's been 112 years since Enoch Sontonga died as a relatively unknown composer, choir master and teacher. But today his legacy lives on through his greatest composition, Nkosi Sikeleli Afrika.
For all your news updates, stay tuned to Your World from Monday to Sunday.
A meteorite hit the Earth 2 million years ago, creating an enormous impact of crater, about 10 kilometers in diameter, near Vredefort in the Free State, 100 kilometers southwest of Johannesburg, now known as the Vredefort Dome, a South African World Heritage Site. The meteorite is said to have been larger than Table Mountain and caused a 1,000 megaton blast of energy. The impact would have heated about 70 cubic kilometers of rock and have increased the Earth's oxygen levels to a degree that made the development of multicellular life possible. The world has about 130 crater structures of possible impact origin. The Vredefort Dome is the largest in the world, followed by Sudbury Crater in Canada and the Chicxulub Crater in Mexico.
The Kalahari Transportier Park is a large wildlife preserve and conservation area in southern Africa. Kalahari means place of thirst. The total area is 38,000 square kilometers. Approximately 3/4 of the park lie in Botswana and 1/4 in South Africa. South Africa embraced the concept of transportiers linking ecological reserves across national borders. On the 12th of May 2000, President Festus Mogae of Botswana and Thabo Mbeki of South Africa formally launched South Africa's first peace park. It has 200 species of birds, including vultures, mammalians such as black Kalahari lions, and large herds of herbivores, namely elands, springboks, blue wildebeest, and more.
Yeah, welcome back. Very good morning to you once again. Myself and Kendall. Well, another hour, Monday morning.
Yep.
Have you had a tough start to the Monday?
It's been a very interesting start. One I definitely would not want to repeat. It's been a very interesting one, to say the least.
I think if we're honest, you could see from the first hour we've had a little bit of, well, technical difficulty on a Monday. Both technical and human, one would have to add. But that's the nature of Monday morning.
It's the nature of the business.
It is what it is. Anyhow, our focus today is on healthcare on the African continent, well, as well as healthcare in general, because it's a basic human right, Kendall.
Yeah, exactly. That we want to find out from our viewers why healthcare has become so expensive.
Yeah, it's almost like a distinction between rich and poor. The one thing that distinguishes is healthcare. Of course, here in South Africa, plans are afoot for national health insurance, and that should change the game completely. But you guys have been tweeting us on this because it's something close to everyone's heart, I would think.
I think it affects every single person who's alive and who's on their way out as well. Pule Mahloko comes through with human rights has been outsourced at the detriment of the poor citizens. Government is postponing the NHI for no reason at all.
Well, I think it's difficult to implement. I think everywhere in the world they're having difficulty with an overall healthcare system. Even the one in Britain's under pressure. Onuke says, let the government subsidize healthcare. It's every human's right, he says. Yes, well, the government that's the plan, actually.
Yeah, absolutely. Simon Mangena says private medical centers need to be regulated and governments should put prices for private health sector.
I agree with that in my personal capacity, Simon. I think unregulated, it just becomes crazy, the prices that they charge for everything. You know, a napkin or a fork in hospital is 50 Rand, for instance.
A blanket.
That's just crazy, yeah.
Cradle carries on with Aish. It's a business opportunity, especially for private GPs and hospitals. It costs 450 Rand for consultation, and if you don't have medical aid, you will suffer.
Yeah, they say, though, that your plumber costs more than your doctor to come out. Your plumber will charge you 600 Rand to come out, but that's only here in Johannesburg. There's the kind of pains that we take.
It's very painful here in Joburg.
Anyhow, also, some pronouncements around, well, the constitutionality of deporting criminals, especially those with foreign passports and others who are illegally in the country. We're running the poll on that, and we're asking, should all foreign criminals, and please, not all foreigners are criminals, should all foreign criminals be deported? 118 of you have voted, with an overwhelming majority saying yes. I think it's something that a lot of people are worried about, Kendall.
Well, absolutely. Got a bit of a frog in my throat.
I see. We'll get you a drink shortly. I mean, water shortly. Blessing says, no. I say no for that, because they learn here in South Africa. What do they learn, these criminals? To be better criminals, I suppose.
No, it seems like it. Let me see if my voice has come back or not. That's a little change, an octave or two higher.
You sound a bit younger now.
Tangai says, I think foreign nationals should not commit these serious crimes. The law of the land must take its course.
There, Kendall, we have a wild Kendall taking a drink. Hopefully we'll get that frog out of his throat. We'll talk about Tabisa Williams says, absolutely, money being used on these criminals is just insane. He says 370 Rand per day at 365 equals 135,000 Rand per prisoner. That's 1,619.2. Wow, the numbers are scary if you look at it. More than R1 billion actually is being spent on foreign criminals. That's taxpayers' money every year.
Tavis has obviously spent time thinking about this one. Blessing Chokera says, this is South African criminals. There is nothing they do with foreigners.
We're only talking about those that are in custody, not whether
not those
who
that
they
are still active.
Yeah, you can buy a gun like airtime, then you can start robbing people. But other countries don't do that. Leave foreigners alone. says Blessing. Yeah, there's a lot of emotion in these discussions, as you can imagine. Two sides of the coin. Foreigners are often being painted as being criminals. So keep tweeting us what you think, because that's how we can widen this discussion. But today belongs to Cristiano Ronaldo, and we're asking the sports question. People have, it's something that divides opinion, isn't it?
Yeah, no, definitely will divide opinion. Cristiano Ronaldo has always divided opinion. You either like him or you don't. You either like the team he plays for or you don't. But the one thing for sure is he's actually definitely merits the question for today, which is, do you think that Cristiano Ronaldo is the best player of all time?
Well, he won back-to-back Champions Leagues. Never been done. Brigo Brick says, no, he's not. What about Leo Messi with 5 Ballon d'Or and 500 goals in all competitions? Yeah, they told me, Brigo, that what about his tax problems?
Ooh, that's a low
blow.
That's a low blow.
There's only one greatest of all time, says Bongs, and that's Messi. He's never won a World Cup, so he can't be the greatest of all time.
Mlungisi comes in again. I remember him from a little early. He says, I'm a Madrid supporter, but even I can admit that Maradona was way greater than Ronaldo.
Mlungisi, Lulu, you know exactly what you're talking about. Maradona is the greatest of all time. The GOAT, as it were. He won World Cups and Scudettos with nobody in the team. Final one, no, he has not yet. He's outperformed Ronaldo, of course.
The original Ronaldo.
The original one. Yeah, he says he's using a wrong criteria to measure. Yes, he's won a World Cup. He's won all the big league titles. He was the most expensive player in the world at his time, and he scored a ton of goals. So he's a contender, definitely in my top 5 of all time. Anyhow, enough sports talk. Let's get on with the morning's headlines. Now, as Child Protection Week ends, Cape Town Police have appealed to the public for information in their latest investigation into the murder of yet another child there. Former Eskom boss Brian Molefe is going to the Labour Court later today to challenge the Eskom board's decision to fire him. And Lesotho's Prime Minister Tom Tabane's All Basotho Convention is leading the polls in that country's elections. In international news, Saudi Arabia, Egypt, Bahrain and the UAE have cut diplomatic ties with Qatar, accusing it of destabilizing the region. That's a sensational development. We'll get to more detail on that shortly, but let's go over to Kendall to give us the sports headlines, and there are plenty this morning.
Plenty, and a very quick one. That story that you just read about Qatar, UAE, Egypt, etc., that should have some ramifications with the World Cup coming to Qatar.
Oh, it's coming up. It's not going to end well.
Yeah, it's not going to end well, as Qatar sponsoring so many teams, sponsoring FIFA, Barcelona, you name it. Should make for interesting reading and talking. This is what we've got for you in the sports today.
Could be the 4th wicket, it should be. JP Duminy settles and takes it comfortably.
The Proteas huff and puff to a 96-run victory over Sri Lanka in the ICC Champions Trophy opener.
The South Africans, they turned the screws through some good fielding, some wonderful bowling from Imran Tahir.
Modric, Ronaldo!
Inspired by Cristiano Ronaldo brace, Real Madrid become the first club to win back-to-back UEFA Champions League titles with a 4-1 thumping of Juventus.
Madrid, UEFA Champions League winners 2017, just as they were in 2016.
Bongmusam Tembu wins the Comrades Marathon in Pietermaritzburg, becoming only the first South African runner to win 2 titles since Bruce Fordyce in 1990. And South African mountain biker Greg Minnaar, the most successful downhill racer of all time, wins a record 7th UCI Downhill Cup title in Scotland.
It was a hard race. The rain made it a bit tough. Not necessarily on the ground, but coming in just before the deer gate, I couldn't actually see where I was going.
All this and more I've got for you later on at 10:40. For now, it's back to Ewan, who's got the news.
Yeah, thank you very much, Kendall. A very concerning story. Another child murder in the Cape. Now, Cape Town Police have appealed now for the public for more information into this investigation into the murder of this child, the body of 5-year-old Menentle Lekata was found yesterday afternoon under a bridge in Broadway. She was last seen on Saturday while playing outside a house in the Nomzamo informal settlement. Little Meningitis was found on the last day of Child Protection Week.
Little ones, often described as priceless gifts, needing physical, emotional and psychological protection. But society is failing them. Most of the suspects are well known to the victims. 14-month-old Lindokuhle Kota was allegedly killed by her father.
I'm still confused. I don't believe that my child is late, and I don't believe that it's the daddy that did this bad thing to her. I'm still caught in the middle. It's because I was with him the time the baby was at his house. He treated the baby very well. Even when I was not around, I knew that my baby was safe.
Communities say they need more social workers and drug rehabilitation centers.
We've been crying for a very long time. We've been suffering for a very long time. But our cry was never heard. It was the cry of Courtney Peters in that dark room where that terrible man was doing terrible things to her that brought you here, Mr. President.
Experts say the moral fiber of society needs to be restored.
We have a man who violates their children, his child. But that is founded on the system that says fathers, that men are entitled to women and children's bodies, literally. Not in the sense of rape or killing them, but in the sense that I literally own you. I own your body. You are my child.
Courtney Peters, Lindokuhle Kota, Iyapha Yamile, and many others paid the highest price. Their graves bearing testimony to a failed society. Nomawethu Solwandle, SABC News, Cape Town.
19, that's the number of children murdered in the Western Cape alone since the beginning of this year, and it will continue to be a focus here on the Newsroom show. We'll look at that once again later this week. Now we move on. The ANC's Peace and Stability Subcommittee has refused to comment on the leaked Gupta emails, but says cyber security must be beefed up. The subcommittee held a media briefing over the weekend ahead of the party's policy conference that will take place later this month. It's also called for foreign nationals in South African prisons to be transferred back to their home countries. The subcommittee says foreigners behind bars are costing the taxpayer close to R1 billion every single year.
The policy discussion document details that there are some 6,400 foreigners in the country's prisons, each costing the state 360 rand a day.
This puts a heavy burden on the already strained fiscus. This is made more serious by the nature of crimes committed by foreign nationals, as 4 in 10 of the 6,440 foreign nationals has committed aggressive crimes, which include murder and attempted murder.
However, in the exchange program proposal lies a potential constitutional problem. What if the convicted offender's country doesn't meet the minimum standards for prisons as per South African laws?
We hope that in the process we would be able to arrive at some form of arrangements or other which would facilitate our ability to exchange prisoners, at least to those countries who are willing to uphold some of the norms and standards that we ourselves uphold in our own countries.
And in several cases, the judiciary has found against the executive. The most recent, the High Court ruling that President Jacob Zuma should submit records and reasons for his March cabinet reshuffle. These have led to concerns on judicial overreach and the separation of powers. The subcommittee believes judicial overreach will remain a contentious issue. Aldrin St-Pierre, SABC News, Johannesburg.
Of course, our question of the day deals with the issue of, well, the cost and the issue of it. That's our poll that we're asking you is, should all foreign criminals, and no, not all foreigners in South Africa are criminals, should all foreign criminals, those that are convicted and that are costing us 370 Rand a day in our prisons, should we just deport them back to where they come from? This 90% of 127 votes agree with that sentiment is yes, they should be deported if they engage in criminal activity and are convicted by the letter of the law in South Africa. Tweets, we got a couple of tweets on this one, and as you can believe, it divides opinion. He says, Marvin to the world says, I think SADC should address this issue. You can deport them all you want, but SA borders are very porous and the criminals will be back in no time. Yeah, that's the concern for sure. Dipantu says if only they will remain in jail in their own countries, that's letting them off the hook if they get deported without sentencing them. So keep them in prison here for their whole sentence and then send them away. Blessing says no. I say no for that because they learn here in South Africa. Blessing, what do they learn, these criminals in our prisons? To be better criminals. They learn here in South Africa. That's our final tweet on the issue now. Keep tweeting us. It's one of those questions, one of the things that we should talk about. Now we move on to the Lesotho elections with 33 constituencies out of 80 now official. Former Prime Minister Tom Tabane's All Basotho convention is leading with 27 of those. This was expected, they say, as the party enjoys support in the capital, Maseru, as well as urban areas. Deputy Prime Minister Motetsho Metsing has meanwhile retained his Mahobong constituency, but lost in Tabana Morena.
Lesotho nationals are eagerly awaiting the outcome of the country's general election, and with counting done at some stations, results are slowly trickling in. The IEC has reassured the nation that the results will be delivered as dictated by the law.
We are expecting that the final outcome of the elections will be on Tuesday at the latest, because according to the law, we have to announce the final results before 7 days.
As for Lesotho nationals, they too are anxiously awaiting the final outcome.
I'm really excited because actually we've been in crisis of this politics.
We want a 5-year government, so I'm very anxious, and I believe that the government that we will have is a very strong one that will complete the whole term.
Despite comments of a lower voter turnout, citizens are optimistic that a new government that will be announced will hold on to its 5 full-year term. Lehana Tsotetsi, SABC News, Maseru, Lesotho.
Anyhow, we move on. Now we move on, well, to a congress of 9,000 professionals. That's medical professionals from all over the African continent. They are going to be at Gallagher Estate from today until the end of the week, discussing the issues that are facing, well, healthcare on the continent. We are now joined from our Pretoria studio by the World Health Organization's representative in South Africa, Dr. Rafaro Chatroa. A very good morning to you, Dr. Rafaro. Thank you for being with us today.
Good morning to you.
Just give us an overview of the Congress taking place here at Gallagher Estate, and how important do you view what is happening there this week?
Thank you. Well, my understanding is that the Congress is organized by industry to showcase developments in technology, but also discuss public health and medicine issues. We are, of course, interested in what is going to happen, to see what technology is available, because, as you know, technology is helping transform healthcare. That's my understanding.
Just with regards to healthcare on the continent, how much work do we still have to do in order to have a healthier African continent?
Well, we have made some progress, especially over the last 25 years during the MDG era. we have seen life expectancies improve. The life expectancy now is around 60 years. But we have countries that have life expectancies around 74 years. But at the same time, there are other countries where life expectancy is 48 years. We should compare this with what's happening in other parts of the world where life expectancy is more than 80 years. And the reasons is to do with how we are organized and how health services are provided on the continent.
What about the outbreak of disease and the kind of illnesses that we see recurring on the continent? Are you happy with the kind of inroads that we are making with regards to disease control?
There has been some good progress in terms of disease control. We can talk about HIV, if you like. 10, 15 years ago, this was a major problem, as you know, but over the last 10 years or so, we have seen a decrease in the number of new infections. From more than 2,000 new infections per year to now about 2 million, to now about 1.3 million per year. So there is an improvement with regards to malaria. Of course, we have seen a decrease in the number of new cases reported. With regards to TB, there has been a decrease in most countries in the number of new cases. But we also have outbreaks of diseases like cholera. We have a handful of countries on the continent that are battling with cholera outbreaks, just to give those as examples.
What about child mortality rates? Children are continue to be the most at risk, it seems, on the continent. How do we overcome the high levels of child mortality rates, even in places like in Southern Africa, where Zambia is one of those that really should be concerning?
You know what? Child mortality is one of the areas which has improved the most on the continent. Many countries realized their MDG target for child mortality. This doesn't mean that we don't have more work to do in this area. We still have high levels of mortality, child mortality ranging between 30 per thousand to over 150 per thousand under fives dying. So the progress needs to be made in terms of improving access to healthcare, but also to ensuring that the kids are fully vaccinated, and also ensuring access to safe water and other requirements, just as examples.
Dr. Raforo, thank you for joining us today. That's coming to us live from Pretoria this morning. That's Dr. Raforo Chatroa. He is the World Health Organization's representative here in Southern Africa. He says we've made a lot of inroads in many of these diseases, but this week's convention here at Gallagher Estate will see, we'll see that even improve a little bit further. Now, this week, along with the African Health Congress, will be the Pan-African Health Tourism Congress. Yes, a first of its kind in South Africa. South Africa is proudly one of the leading and go-to countries as we are able to provide better healthcare than some of our African counterparts. Health tourism. Well, I'm joined here all the way from KwaZulu-Natal. He's the Umhlatuze Mayor Councillor Mduduzi Mhlongo. Very good morning to you, sir.
Thank you very much for having me. Good morning to you.
Now, the province of KZN has been chosen to host the first Health Tourism Congress, the Pan-African one that is. What should we expect from this?
Well, it's a Congress mainly to ensure that we optimize and create awareness around health tourism as a sector, as you said, rightfully so, that we are one of the go-to countries when it comes to medical health. And so we want to tap into that market and ensure that we benefit from it.
How do we benefit? How do we benefit? Just give us the sort of value chain that you see with regards to this, the beneficiation of this kind of tourism.
The market, the market share worldwide is 20 billion US dollars. Now, we have seen a lot of hospitals being built, developed around particularly our area where we come from. And we think that adjacent to that should be a development of pharmaceutical companies and so on, so that we deal also with the issue of youth unemployment in particular.
Yeah.
So in our view, when you have people coming to get medical treatment, they can also extend their stay, so that after that you link what you call wellness with our own African safari and the wilderness.
The opportunity for South Africa then, from what I'm hearing, is not in things like cosmetics and that sort of thing. It's because there's a challenge with regards to the quality of healthcare elsewhere on the continent. The opportunity is to bring those people here and take care of them in South Africa, and therein lies the business opportunity.
Yes. In particular, countries such as Mauritius, in the African context, Morocco, and us, have emerged as leading countries in the African health tourism sector. You know, our reputation goes as far back as Dr. Chris Barnett.
Yeah.
And so out of that, there are opportunities, of course, within the surgical procedures and cosmetic procedures. Yeah. So it's a whole range of and a whole spectrum of opportunities which can be presented. What we want to do is to position ourselves as a country in terms of the legislative framework and policies that accompany that in order to benefit.
We always, and we're asking a question to our viewers today, why is healthcare so expensive when it's a basic human right? We feel in South Africa it's expensive for locals to get the best care, but people who come from outside see it as competitive?
Of course, there is this balance that should be struck between providing what is a basic human right.
Yeah.
But at the moment, it is a very expensive process. But you can't ignore it and not benefit from it. So what we're doing here is aiming to target that opportunity while it still exists. We understand what we are doing with NHI and all of that. But here is an opportunity that needs to be taken, and we're taking that opportunity.
Our healthcare systems, where do they rank with regards to the rest of the world? And also maybe if you can give us an idea of where the money sits now with regards to health tourism and where you would like to see it in maybe 10 years' time.
Well, obviously, in South Africa, in the continent, we are at the cutting edge. But what you want to do, in particular as the province of KwaZulu-Natal and the northern part of KwaZulu-Natal, is to say, we have these institutions which we believe are world-class, but also, over and above that, we have the wildlife that we present to you. We have the unique weather conditions that is summer all round, and we believe that forms part of how you deal with your health.
Yeah.
And so we are best placed, and in future we think we will be the leading municipality in particular around health.
Are we then going to see African leaders come to KwaZulu-Natal instead of going to Singapore and elsewhere? Because it's a disturbing trend, I think, for all people on the continent, that our leaders of nations would go for weeks on end outside of the African continent looking for healthcare.
It is a disturbing trend, and we're hoping that we will turn around that situation. Part of the things that need to be done, of course, is to create this legislative framework that will enable us to tap into this market, but also ensure that we continuously grow and upgrade our facilities so that we provide the best facilities. It is what we want to do, to see Africans finding African solutions.
Are you attending the Congress in Gallagher Estate this week or not?
I am not. I am attending the one in Umhlatuzo municipality.
Okay, fantastic. Well, health tourism, there is something, if you haven't thought about it, something that, well, can help us, even help with creating job opportunities. That's what the province of KwaZulu-Natal wants to do, and I'll tell you, it's a great idea. Joining us from the Umhlatuzo municipality, the Mayor, Councillor Mduduzi Mhlongo. Thank you for being with us here on Newsroom today, sir.
Thank you very much. It was a pleasure.
The question we ask is, healthcare is a basic human right. Yes, a basic human right enshrined in our Constitution. Why is it so expensive, unaffordable for us then? Why has it become so difficult to get affordable healthcare? Of course, we've got the National Health Insurance, and that's happening. But what do you think? Where are we now? That's in the future. Where are we now? Let's take a look at your tweets. Katleho tweets us and says, it's just business opportunity. Private GPs and hospitals, it costs 450 Rand for consultation. And if you don't have medical aid, you will suffer, he says. Yes, they are costing us millions, says Mandila Kejonto. Simon says, private medical centres need to be regulated and government should put prices for the private health sector. Yes, plans are afoot for that because it's become simply too expensive for us to afford private healthcare here in South Africa. Time for us to take a short break. You're watching Newsroom here on SABC News.
The fossil hominid sites at Sterkfontein Caves, known as Cradle of Humankind, were declared a World Heritage Site on the 2nd of December 1999. The Cradle of Humankind covers an area of over 47,000 hectares of privately owned land northwest of Johannesburg. Most of the site is on dolomite, a rock type which is slightly soluble in water. There are currently over 200 caves on the site and 13 fossil sites. We know that Australopithecus africanus were present in the cradle from about 2 to 4 million years ago. It is generally known that hominids are close relatives of human ancestors.
Welcome back. You're back with Newsroom, and of course healthcare is taking centre stage in South Africa this week as we enter into what we will call, well, Industry 4.0, or the fourth industrial revolution. What will this mean for healthcare on the continent of Africa and here in South Africa in particular? And will we be able to keep up with the rest of the world? Now, from emergency drone deliveries, driverless emergency vehicles, vocal biomakers that detect ailments, yes, detect ailments, and, well, even AI and robotic surgeons. But to tell us what more we can expect a little bit closer to home, joining us from our Parliamentary studios in Cape Town today is the Director of Health Technology at the Department of Health, Mr. Mladen Puluta. Mr. Puluta, very good morning to you.
Good morning, Eben. Thank you for the opportunity.
with all the technology that I see coming, is our GP going to be obsolete shortly?
Not at all. I think we need to take care of the basics. I think we need to realize that we are a developmental state. We are on a continent that is facing a huge disease burden, a disproportionate disease burden. Resources are stretched everywhere, and in many cases, even the basics can't be provided. So yes, there are very exciting opportunities for innovation, even in Africa, but I'm of the view that those innovations must talk to our realities and to our contexts, so that we have appropriate, affordable, sustainable solutions that meet defined needs.
Do you think the technological revolution that's coming is going to make it cheaper?
I guess one needs to unpack what is meant by cheaper. Cheaper for who? Because as you well know, and your previous interviews refer to this, there are many stakeholders in the healthcare chain. So is it cheaper for the patient, for the healthcare provider, whether it's public or private sector? Is it cheaper for the funder? Is it cheaper for government and for the taxpayer as a whole? So I think one of the important exercises that needs to be conducted when we talk about the cost of technology is to unpack those technology costs and then to look at the cost versus the benefit for the various stakeholders, and to make sure that we get the best possible solutions that is aligned with the interests and needs of those stakeholders, and ultimately, of course, the patient.
We've got the Congress here in Johannesburg at Gallagher Estate this week. That's the sort of African Health in Durban. Technology, what kind of technological advancements do you think will be the sort of outstanding features at this Congress, but also in the short term going forward?
Right. Well, the conference really is a multifaceted event. It's primarily an exhibition of thousands of international and local suppliers and service providers. And then in association with that, there are more than 10 conferences on various topics that are being offered. I happen to be chairing one, which is on the life cycle management of health technologies, which is a pressing need both in many African countries and in our own country. So to answer your question, you will see the latest and the greatest in terms of what is available. But I think what the conferences will be there to do is to interrogate the interface and the linkages between what you see on the exhibition floor and the realities and the contexts of the settings from which the participants to these conferences come. In my own case, as I said, we have major challenges around the life cycle management of health technologies, and we need to look at systems and processes that can empower the upstream decision-making prior to procurement, as well as to enable processes and systems downstream of procurement, such as asset and maintenance management, that will ensure the investments that we do make are done so affordably and sustainably.
Now, you mentioned we should come back to the reality a little bit, because it's nice to see the gadgets in the future and all that sort of thing, but what do you foresee as the major changes that we can expect to see in South Africa's healthcare in the months and years to come?
I think the whole e-health wave of innovation will be a major factor, not only in South Africa, but in the African region and other developing countries. It'll empower patients. It will introduce much greater flexibility, and it should make the lives and the tasks of health professionals easier. Of course, any innovation needs to be wisely managed, and tough questions must be asked up front. But I certainly see e-health as a major wave of innovation that can assist and empower healthcare delivery, not only in urban areas, but particularly in rural areas.
That was going to be my next question, is how do we overcome that challenge? Is it as simple as what you mentioned, or do we need to have a rethink about how do we deliver healthcare in our rural areas?
A lot of work has been done, not only in South Africa, but in fact internationally. And there are many great case studies of successful innovations. One thinks, for example, of Rwanda, Kenya, where that bridge has been gapped. The reality is that many more Africans are connected through cell phones than through computers to the internet. So the cell phone infrastructure is provided essentially by different stakeholders, but one can make use of that same infrastructure, which is maintained by those stakeholders, to effect healthcare services optimally, and as I said, ultimately to empower patients.
Cost is always, of course, one of the main considerations, and I suppose it's a balancing act. How do we maintain state-of-the-art facilities and raise money? Are you happy that we've got that one? We've got a handle on that one?
No, I'm not, to be honest. Coming back to what I said earlier, if we use the analogy with parenting or parenthood,
yeah.
I don't think that we are expending sufficient effort on upstream decision-making, asking tough questions about are we getting the appropriate, affordable, sustainable technologies? And downstream, we're not investing sufficient effort and resources into proper asset and maintenance management so that the investments we do make fulfill their full service potential. In the private sector, this is a given. They sweat their assets because it impacts on the bottom line in a positive way. But I think governments in Africa are particularly weak in systems and processes to do with this upstream and downstream decision-making. So that, for me, also is a huge opportunity to develop systems that we in Africa and South Africa can embed and resource to ensure that our decisions around technologies that are procured are the correct decisions, that are smart decisions, and that we are able to care for and sustain the technology investments that we do make. So yes, and I think that's really the primary objective of the conference that I'm chairing on life cycle management of health technologies. How do we take international best practice and establish the best way to adapt, adopt, embed, and resource, particularly health technology assessment, which is an applied field of health economics, and clinical engineering, which is an applied field of engineering asset management, to optimally manage the life cycles of health technologies, whether they are cell phone apps or X-ray machines or CD scanners.
So thank you very much for joining us today from our parliamentary studios in Cape Town, the Director of Health Technology at the Department of Health, Mr. Mladen Paluta, and he tells us, yeah, we are at the precipice of great change in the health sector in South Africa. Hopefully, I say, for the better, and we will all pay a little bit less. Anyhow, we're going to take a little break now. When we come back, Kendall will give us a sports update. It's been a massive sporting weekend, so it should be a bumper sports edition. Don't miss it.
Saying that the former minister is now endorsing Ramaphosa as the next president. Campaign time, Prof?
Yeah.
So early.
Let's at least accept that people have a right to expressing themselves in terms of who they support.
But what is lacking very seriously is that there is no that leadership role that is played by the leadership to say, we haven't opened succession and let us deal with those that are campaigning openly, because we haven't opened it as the leadership of the ANC.
What we need in this country is that we need a ruling party or leading party to be able to engage with issues that affect the people.
Our people campaign
openly. It weakens the organization. In fact, it makes the policies of the ANC even more popular.
Stay tuned to Media Monitor and catch on analysts unpacking top stories every Sunday from 9 a.m.
Welcome back. It's Monday morning. My voice is back and very happy to be here to bring you what happened over a cracker of a weekend. We start off with local hero Bomusa Mthembu destroying the field in the uprun Comrades Marathon to win his second Comrades Marathon title. This after winning the down run to Durban in 2014. He becomes only the second South African after the legendary Bruce Fordyce to win 2 titles.
South Africa's Charles Giane took early control in the 86.7-kilometer run, charging through the halfway point at Drummond, nearly 2 minutes clear of a large chasing group. Giane was eventually caught to 22 kilometers to go. Amongst those in the chasing pack was last year's down-run champ David Khatebe and the man who was to win his race, Bomusa Mthembu. Mthembu gradually dropped the opposition by the wayside. One by one they fell as the Pietermaritzburg native made his way home. With less than 10 kilometers to go and with the infamous Polyshores climb approaching, Mthembu made his move and he never looked back. He held on to secure victory in 5 hours, 35 minutes and 34 seconds. And while he was 11 minutes outside the uprun record, he finished more than 3 minutes ahead of Zimbabwean athlete Atiwanda Nyamande, who took second place nearly 3 minutes later, and Gift Kalehe, who made up the podium, coming home 6 minutes later. Mthembu, who won the Comrades Down in 2014 and back silver at the 100-kilometer World Championships last year, becomes the first South African man in 27 years to win the prestigious annual race more than once. Meanwhile, in the women's run, American athlete Camilla Herron had no problems in bagging her maiden Comrades title. She missed out on 2 previous attempts of the race due to illness and injury. Despite having stopped before the line believing she had finished, she went on to take victory in 6 hours, 27 minutes and 35 seconds. Russian athlete Alexandra Morozova pushed hard to grab second spot 4 minutes later. Last year's down-run winner, Shanae Bosman, struggled with a groin injury, but she held on to finish third in 6 hours, 39 minutes and 51 seconds and was the first South African woman home. Tabiso Sitole, SABC News.
Now moving on to football, where Platinum Stars were roundly beaten by Tunisian side CS Sfaxien by 3-0 in Tunisia in their CAF Confederations Cup Group B encounter, leaving them languishing at the bottom of the group. And SuperSport United overturned a 2-goal deficit to secure a 2-2 draw in a crucial Group D tie against Congolese giants TP Mazembe. United, who made a dramatic comeback in a packed Lubumbashi Stadium, were roundly applauded by local fans for their fighting spirit. They now top the group with 5 points.
This was a crucial match for both TP Mazembe and SuperSport United to win. It was a top-of-the-log clash, and a win will see either of the teams top the log in Group D. Before this match, both teams had 4 points. SuperSport, who scored 7 goals, was second on the log, followed by Mazembe, who scored 3. However, Horoya of Guinea, who drew 1-1 against CF Monana of Gabon, topped the log with 5 points. Mazembe led 2-1 at half-time. In the second half, SuperSport put pressure on Mazembe and their defense looked shaky. Finally, Matsatsanza were rewarded when sensational player Tebogo Mokoena scored a free header to level the scores. Matsatsanza drew 2-2 against Horoya in the opening match. In their second match, they beat Monana in their own backyard. The match against Mazembe helped them to consolidate their position at the top with 5 points. Tabashiba, SABC News.
And the inimitable Cristiano Ronaldo once again inspired Real Madrid to a record 12th UEFA Champions League title with a brace as the team crushed Juventus with 4-1 at the Millennium Stadium in Cardiff. Let's have a look at the highlights.
Benzema.
Here's Ronaldo. Carvajal. Ronaldo! Well in front. It's Cristiano Ronaldo. Including a hamstring issue in the semi-final. Higuain. Mandzukic! Fantastic! Brilliant goal! Juve level! It's Mario Mandzukic with a goal of fantastic quality who draws the Italians level. 1-1.
What a magnificent piece of athleticism.
Benzema. Kroos. Casemiro! Mara took a deflection, but it's Casemiro's goal.
And there was a little altercation between the two Brazilians.
Modric, Ronaldo! Ronaldo nips in. Marcelo. Terrific work by Marcelo. Asensio has wrapped it up in style for Real. Sergio Ramos takes hold of the Champions League trophy. La duodecimo, Real Madrid retain the UEFA Champions League. A carnival night in Cardiff.
Many saying that the former minister is now endorsing Ramaphosa as the next president. Campaign time, Prof?
Yeah.
So early.
Let's at least accept that people have a right to expressing themselves in terms of who they support.
But what is lacking very seriously is that there is no that leadership role that is played by the leadership to say, we haven't opened succession and let us deal with those that are campaigning openly, because we haven't opened it as the leadership of the ANC.
What we need in this country is that we need a ruling party or leading party to be able to engage with issues that affect the people.
Our people campaign openly. It weakens the organization. In fact, it makes the policies of the ANC even more popular.
Stay tuned to Media Monitor and catch on analysts unpacking top stories every Sunday from 9 a.m.
As a transgender activist, do you feel welcome? Are you free here in South Africa?
In South Africa, we think that 1994 just took an eraser and erased a lot of the issues of apartheid.
What is the difference between you and me?
You know, a person can easily say we're all human, but we need to embrace our differences.
The fact that it is called a gay club, why are other clubs not called other things?
It's a safety thing, you know. By virtue of actually speaking about this incident, brings about the question of why do you even need a club that needs to be called a gay club? I cannot walk into a club with my lover, my male lover. I cannot walk into Taboo, a South African club, and just hold my lover and we kiss, and then people think it's okay.
They do that?
Well, we do, but then there have been instances of actually people, bouncers walking in and actually telling you to stop or get out of the club.
Do you think it was a mistake that you were born a boy?
I've come to, not to peace with my body, but I've accepted myself where I am completely.
Somebody may say you are lying. Because if you have accepted yourself completely as you are, you would be the boy that your mom gave birth to.
I can self-actualize. I can become what I want to be at the end of the day.
From very humble beginnings and dusty streets in Hammanskraal, a brother, a son, a friend, a dancer, a choreographer, and a businessman recognized internationally, simply believed in himself, and everything else fell into place because of the fire and passion that was burning inside him.
My childhood was a very happy time for the big part, you know. I was a very loud child. I was rambunctious. I had a lot of energy. You know, I was that kid that would be waking up at night to entertain the elders during family festivities. But I think more than anything, you know, I was also a very confused child. You know, I struggled with a lot of identity issues, you know, because I suppose the way I saw myself inside was always different to the world that I lived in. You know, I grew up in a community where one would say there were no references of, you know, people that I would say lived the sort of life that I saw myself living.
Paul realized that his community didn't have much resources to grow his passion, so he took it upon himself to work on his craft.
To do those classes at 16 was a turning point. At 18, when I got a scholarship in Denmark, that was my breakthrough. I decided to just go for one of the free classes because I was there as an exchange student. And out of that first class, I got called aside by this lady called Martha Gardner, who at the time I didn't know was the principal of this school called the Dancer Verkstedet Dance Foundation in Denmark. And she said to me who I was and what I was doing. I explained to her that I was in Denmark for a year for a cultural exchange program. And she said to me she could see that I love dancing. Is this something that I would like to do? And I said, yeah, you know, I love it. I suppose, you know, this is something I've always been passionate about.
As a professional dancer and choreographer, it is vital for him to take care of his body. This career may look easy, but it's not always fun and games. Paul explains what his day usually looks like.
My life is really interesting. If you told me when I was 17 or 15 that my life would be the way it is today, I would have laughed at you because of the fact that I was always into routines. I was always into being disciplined and doing things systematically. And I don't think I've lost that. I hustle every day. That I hustle from the moment I wake up till the moment I sleep.
His versatility is the reason why he was appointed as head choreographer for Africa's first dance film, Hear Me Move.
I got the opportunity to choreograph South Africa's first dance film. And they were looking for a choreographer that had an influence or a flair of different styles, but at the same time, somebody who could represent this bourgeois culture. And that was another challenge for me to say, geez, can you believe that I've gone all over the world, I've won world championships for doing jazz and classical work, and now I come back home, and my first task, my first big task, is to tell our story.
He explains how personal the film was to him.
Working on that film was rather daunting. It was exhilarating in more ways than one, but it was daunting in that this was the first for Africa. It was the first for South Africa. I knew as a young person who was inspired by film the power that film has. And I walked into it understanding the responsibility we had in telling the story in a way that would inspire and give hope to the next generation. But at the same time, you know, encapsulate where South Africa is 20 years on, because we were trying to tell the story of what it means to be a young person who is trying to express themselves through dance 20 years into the new South Africa.
His message is simple. If you dream it, you can achieve it.
I've always had dreams for myself, but life has surprised me in more ways than one. And that's why I have a sense of appreciation. I have a sense of feeling almost sometimes undeserving of some of the things the opportunities that I have found myself being presented with.
City of Tshwane's first official brand ambassador, voted top 40 powerful men under 40 by Destiny magazine, a fellow for the United States government's Mandela Washington Fellowship for Young African Leaders. Just a young man from a small village, now touring internationally because of the passion and the fire burning inside him. There's definitely nothing stopping Paul Mujaji.
Monday morning. It's been a difficult Monday morning at times, Kendall, but yeah, we're into our work and it's our final hour.
100%. Looking forward to this final hour, I tell you.
Yeah, it's been a very busy sporting weekend, of course, but our focus early doors so far have been on healthcare, not just in South Africa, but on the continent. Yes, it's a basic human right. That's what we put on our question. It's a basic human right. But why has it been so expensive? Some would say unaffordable, Kendall.
Absolutely. I think the numbers speak for themselves. A lot of people are under the cosh in terms of affording healthcare for themselves and their loved ones.
9,000 of those healthcare professionals, they're meeting this week here at Gallagher Estate to look at, well, answers to the questions within healthcare. Let's have a look at some of the new tweets, what you guys are telling us. Perry says, Kendall?
Healthcare has become affordable only for those who earn good salaries and can afford to live healthily.
Yeah, that's another question we have to talk about. It's to live healthily is not cheap.
It's not cheap.
To eat clean is not cheap, no doubt. Michael, the big M, says, guys, social inequality, affordability and lack of competition in pharmaceutical companies is the problem and the reason why we have the issues that we have. Keep tweeting us, guys. We love your interactions. That's what it is. But we're also running a poll today. And the poll, well, there were some pronouncements by the Justice Minister around this. The Constitution says, no, we can't just chuck them out of the country. But we ask, should this happen now?
Yeah,
people are voting.
Now we've got this this really good constitution, and the question really is, should all foreign criminals be deported? We've got 143 votes that have come in so far, and you know what? Even an overwhelming, almost 100% are saying absolutely they should be deported, those foreign criminals.
My view, I say they should finish their sentence in prison and then we deport them. Of course, some say they just come straight back to South Africa. Not all foreigners are criminals. That's what you are tweeting us. What are some of the new tweets that are coming in? I think some of our neighbours take offence to foreign criminals, the concept.
It seems like it is. Michael Bigamstole says, yes, because they're costing us as taxpayers. They should finish their sentences at their countries of birth.
They should finish their sentences in the country. Molokgadi Mapula says, now it's proven that crime in South Africa is mostly done by foreigners. I'm not sure about that. That is a reckless statement, Molokgadi. There's definitely some involvement, but you can't say the majority of crime. That is a very reckless statement.
Yeah, Nozi Gumede says, laugh out loud. Watch our government deport you, brothers. They'll die with hunger in their country.
Laugh out loud, Nozi. I don't know if that is right to be laughing at the plight of others. Anyhow, sports question today deals with Cristiano Ronaldo. Do we have the picture of him still available? Well, we had a great picture of Cristiano Ronaldo a little bit earlier. So we ask you, is he the greatest player of all time, Kendall?
Yeah, definitely valid this morning. And when we look back at what he did and what Real Madrid over the weekend, La Duodecima, they've won. And Ronaldo has scored 600 goals already. And it was 12 for this year's competition.
Well, of course, the Messi supporters are already bashing him, saying, oh, Messi's better. Well, he doesn't have a right foot, does he? Anyhow, let's take a look at your tweets.
The first one from Barry Martin. Now, he weighs in on this issue as well. Says Cristiano Ronaldo might not be the greatest of all time, but is indeed amongst the world's finest.
Thanks, Barry. I think Barry's on point there. Michael Sitole says, not the greatest, but one of the greatest of our generation. And what a pleasure to have witnessed his awesomeness in our time. Yes, you must win a World Cup to be the greatest of all time. It's just what it is.
You know, you and I will always perennially disagree on that particular point.
No, it's not me. That's what the great players of all time say.
True that.
The only way to gauge you against those of yesterday is at the pinnacle of the sport, which is the World Cup.
Well, that is true, but yes, let's leave
We'll
it at that. Let's leave it at that. Bigger Brick says no, he's not. What about Lionel Messi with 5 Ballon d'Ors and 500 goals in all competitions?
Well, Ronaldo's now got 4 Ballon d'Ors and 600 goals. How about that? Anyhow, those are questions that never have real answers to them because they live in the free market of public opinion. Myself and Kendall are going to give you the headlines now. As Child Protection Week ends, Cape Town Police have now appealed to the public for information in the investigation into the murder of yet another child. Lesotho's former Prime Minister Tom Tabane's All-Basotho Convention is leading the polls in that country's election. And Saudi Arabia, Egypt, Bahrain and the United Arab Emirates have cut diplomatic ties with Qatar, accusing it of destabilizing the region. Yeah, earth-shattering news if you live in the Middle East. It looks like it would be difficult times ahead. Kendall will give us the sports headlines quickly.
Yeah, but thank you very much for that. Good morning to you. This is what we've got for you in the sports today.
This could be the 4th wicket. It should be. JP Duminy settles and takes it comfortably.
Proteas huff and puff to a 96-run victory over Sri Lanka in their ICC Champions Trophy opener.
The South Africans, they turned the screws through some good fielding, some wonderful bowling from Imran Tahir.
Modric, Ronaldo!
Inspired by a Cristiano Ronaldo brace, Real Madrid become the first club to win back-to-back UEFA Champions League titles with a 4-1 thumping of Juventus.
Madrid, UEFA Champions League winners 2017, just as they were in 2016.
Bongmu Samtembu wins their Comrades Marathon in Pietermaritzburg, becoming only the first South African runner to win 2 titles since Bruce Fordyce in 1990.
Make some noise for Bongmu Samtembu!
South African mountain biker Greg Minnaar, the most successful downhill racer of all time, wins a record 7th UCI downhill title in Scotland.
It was a hard race. You know, the rain made it a bit tough. Not necessarily on the ground, but, you know, coming just before the deer gate, I couldn't actually see where I was going.
The man's definitely a legend in his own right. More about all of this a little later on at 11:35. For now, it is time for the news. Stay with Eben.
Yeah, thank you, Kendall. Very good morning to you once again. Now, this is our top story. Cape Town Police have appealed to the public for information in their investigation into the murder of yet another child. The body of 5-year-old Minentle Lekata was found yesterday afternoon under a bridge in Broadway. She was last seen on Saturday while playing outside a house in the Nomzamo informal settlement. Little Minentle was found on the last day of Child Protection Week.
Little ones, often described as priceless gifts, needing physical, emotional, and psychological protection. But society is failing them. Most of the suspects are well known to the victims. 14-month-old Lindokuhle Kota was allegedly killed by her father.
I'm still confused. I don't believe that my child is late, and I don't believe that it's the daddy that did this bad thing to her. I'm still caught in the middle. It's because I was with him the time the baby was at his house. He treated the baby very well. Even when I was not around, I knew that my baby was safe.
Communities say they need more social workers and drug rehabilitation centers.
We've been crying for a very long time. We've been suffering for a very long time. But our cry was never heard. It was the cry of Courtney Peters in that dark room where that terrible man was doing terrible things to her that brought you here, Mr. President.
Experts say the moral fiber of society needs to be restored.
You have a man who violates their children, his child. But that is founded on the system that says fathers, that men are entitled to women and children's bodies, literally. Not in the sense of rape or killing them, but in the sense that I literally own you. I own your body. You are my child.
Courtney Peters, Lindokuhle Kota, Iyapha Yamile, and many others paid the highest price. Their graves bearing testimony to a failed society. Nomawethu Solwandle, SABC News, Cape Town.
The ANC's Peace and Stability Subcommittee has refused to comment on the leaked Gupta emails, but says cybersecurity must be beefed up. The subcommittee held a media briefing over the weekend ahead of the party's policy conference later this month. It also called for foreign nationals in South African prisons to be transferred to their home countries. The subcommittee says foreigners behind bars are costing the taxpayer close to R1 billion a year.
The policy discussion document details that there are some 6,400 foreigners in the country's prisons, each costing the state 360 rand a day.
This puts a heavy burden on the already strained fiscus. This is made more serious by the nature of crimes committed by foreign nationals, as 4 in 10 of the 6,440 foreign nationals has committed aggressive crimes, which include murder and attempted murder.
However, in the exchange program proposal lies a potential constitutional problem. What if the convicted offender's country doesn't meet the minimum standards for prisons as per South African laws?
We hope that in the process we would be able to arrive at some form of arrangements or other which would facilitate our ability to exchange prisoners, at least to those countries who are willing to uphold some of the norms and standards that we ourselves uphold in our own countries.
And in several cases, the judiciary has found against the executive. The most recent, the High Court ruling that President Jacob Zuma should submit records and reasons for his March cabinet reshuffle. These have led to concerns on judicial overreach and the separation of powers. The subcommittee believes judicial overreach will remain a contentious issue. Aldrin St-Pierre, SABC News, Johannesburg.
Of course, we are asking you on our poll exactly the question that comes out of that story. Should all foreign criminals be deported back to their home countries? You've heard the number. The number is quite high. It costs us more than R1 billion a year just to house illegal foreign criminals in our prisons here in South Africa. 143 votes in an overwhelming 90% yes. Now, EFF leader Julius Malema says the fight for land will continue. Malema was speaking after his case was postponed until the 27th of October at the Bloemfontein Magistrates Court. He's accused of incitement to violence after he called on his supporters to occupy vacant land.
We are fighting for the equal sharing of the land. It must be returned into the hands of the rightful owners. And we think it is a good thing to do, because any true freedom means that the oppressed must enjoy the economic freedom too, because political freedom without economic freedom is meaningless. What informed the struggles against colonialism and apartheid later was precisely because our people were robbed of their land and therefore they thought it was necessary to then fight to regain the ownership of the land. And 1994 did not bring any land, and that's why the struggle continues.
Moving abroad, Saudi Arabia, Egypt, the United Arab Emirates and Bahrain have all severed ties with Qatar. The three Gulf states have accused Qatar of supporting terrorism in an unprecedented breach between the most powerful members of the Gulf Cooperation Council. This court dramatically escalates a dispute over Qatar's support of the Muslim Brotherhood, the world's oldest Islamist movement, and adds accusations that Doha even backs the agenda of regional arch-rival Iran. The three Gulf states announced the closure of transport ties with Qatar and gave Qatari visitors and residents 2 weeks to leave their countries. Qatar was also expelled from a Saudi-led coalition fighting in the Yemen. A split between Doha and its closest allies can have repercussions around the Middle East, where Gulf states have used their financial and political power to influence events in Libya, Egypt, Syria, Iraq and the Yemen. Qatar is also due to host the World Cup, Soccer World Cup, that is, in 2022. Of course, it's World Environment Day today, and it's the biggest, most globally celebrated day for positive environmental action. It's the United Nations principal vehicle for encouraging worldwide awareness and action for the environment. But what is South Africa doing to highlight the importance of this day? Well, we are joined in studio by the spokesperson for the Department of Environmental Affairs, Albie Medisa. Very good morning to Albie. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you and good morning.
Before we talk about World Environmental Day today, which of course is an important day, it's sort of been the precursor to this has been Donald Trump pulling the US out of the Paris Accord, which some would say was exponential damage to the hopes of the world of getting a solution to our climate situation. As South Africa, where are we with regards to this?
Look, the South African government is very concerned and regrets the announcement by the American administration that they are withdrawing from the Paris Agreement. We believe strongly that the work that's been done thus far by global parties under the UNFCCC have been quite progressive, and that the inclusion of big economies like the US are exactly what we need for us to address the issue of climate change, because it doesn't respect political boundaries, and therefore it calls for all parties to work together in unison. That we need to see how we work collectively to ensure that we bring down possible increases of temperatures to just below 2 degrees.
How are we communicating with the US with regards to the accord?
Look, we are part of the multilateral agreement, the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, that specifically looks at the different parties coming together within the UN system. And therefore, we would want to urge the American government to reconsider its position that is important for them as one of the key economies of the world to be part of this particular effort, but also that as a developing country ourselves, we have taken a bold decision to be part of the United Nations Framework Convention, largely because we think we need to lead by example and we need to be a responsible global citizen, and we urge the Americans to also emulate that example as well.
Yeah, it's going to be a tough fight, I think, going forward. I want to talk to you a little bit about what's happening here in South Africa, because you can't speak to those who don't want to listen to you. But anyhow, this day is important for South Africa because our environment is very sensitive and probably will be more sensitive than most if we have 2, 3, 4 degrees change in the next 100 years.
Of course. I mean, our program as government in terms of environmental protection realize the fact that if you're going to have climate change, the increases in temperatures are going to have an impact on food security. Food security because it will mean that if you had to add 2 degrees to our temperatures, those regions of the country where we plant our food are going to be adversely affected. And it will have an impact in terms of the oceans, because then if we have increase in temperatures and acidification of the ocean, it means that the fish is going to migrate deep into the ocean, and those who rely on seafood in the coastal towns will be impacted upon. Majorly. But of course, the inclement conditions that are going to arise out of that would have to have a bearing on our biodiversity. Our theme today, as it's a theme globally, is connecting people to nature. So that particular theme calls on all of us to look at how we on a daily basis engage with the environment, how we treat the water that we drink, how we treat the air that we breathe.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, the air that we breathe, the water that we drink are dependent on how we treat the environment.
You know, now you're talking about what we can do to make a contribution, and littering is probably one of the things that you guys must have the biggest problem with, because that's the one thing that really costs us, I think, especially in the urban areas in South Africa. How do we overcome? And because we talk to people, but they don't seem to be listening about the littering. But
the fact is that we are a country that's urbanizing. And with urbanization, it means the levels of consumption increases.
Yeah.
When level of consumption increase, it means that we have more and more of waste going to the landfill site. What is not increasing, though, is the land size. So South Africa, as it is, occupying 2% of the global land, is not going to increase. How are we going to free up that land that we use as landfill site so that it's used for other economically beneficial activities?
Yeah.
We have, as part of the package that was presented by Minister Malema just about 2 weeks ago in the budget speech, are looking at, amongst others, coming up with waste plans for the paper and packaging industries, the plastic industries, as well as, amongst others, the electronic industries. Electronic industries largely because, you know, technology changes so fast. The laptops that we use, the iPads that we use, our cell phones have got a very shorter lifespan.
Yeah.
After a year or two or so, we throw them away. They end up in landfill sites, and they are not good for the environment because some of those televisions, for an example, have got mercury that ends up going into the ground and gets sucked into the groundwater. So our efforts are to ensure that we move towards a recycling economy where jobs can be created, because as we've said before, there is going to be wealth generated within the waste sector, and that South Africa is going to take advantage of that opportunity as well.
Yeah, you can almost see the first throes of it starting to happen on our streets. I want to talk about your theme, connecting people with nature, and I want to talk about our parks. We've got such beautiful parks in and around our cities. Is part of connecting people with nature is getting them out of the house and into our parks. How do we do that? Is it about getting people to go out and pick up the litter first?
It's about a whole range of things, even. It's about how we treat the environment, the issue around not polluting our water. That's what nature gives us, water, fresh water to drink. It's about not polluting the air that we breathe, because at the end of the day, the health profile of South Africa is dependent on the quality of air that we breathe. If your air quality is going to be adversely affected by constant pollution, it's going to have an impact in terms of your health profile over a longer period of time. It's about, at the ultimate end, how we treat the environment, the trees that we plant, the respecting the parks that we have. I mean, we've got some of the most beautiful national parks. Kruger National Park is one of the most respected parks across the world. It's about the investment that we make in ensuring that we continue to draw tourists to our country. We, by the way, are the third mega diverse country in the world in terms of biodiversity. Now, it means that despite the fact that we occupy 2% of the land, we are the third best globally. Now, that's good for tourism. That's good for us as a country. What it means is that we have to ensure that we maintain that position, or at least improve it. We can't afford to take it down.
Our final message on World Environmental Day to South Africa.
Look, the month of June is Environment Month. Today is World Environment Day. The 8th of June is World Oceans Day. The 17th of June is World Day to Combat Desertification. All of these days, the common thread that cuts across is about protecting the environment, because at the end of the day, the income that we eke out from the land, from the ocean, and wherever, it's dependent on our attitude toward the environment. And that's why it's important for us to realize what the Constitution says: protect the environment for the current generation, and ensure that as we hand over the world to our children and our children's children, we do it with pride, because we would have protected it, we would have looked after it.
Let's hope they don't hold that against us when we do, Albie, when we hand a broken world over. Thanks, Albie Madise, the Department of Environmental Affairs spokesperson, tells us here on World Environmental Day. It's all of our responsibility. We all have to make a contribution towards that. Time for us to take a short break. Newsroom will be right back.
It is 6 p.m. Central African Time, broadcasting live from Johannesburg. This is Primetime News.
South Africa said farewell to one of the Rivonia trialists, Uncle Cappy, a fearless stalwart.
With this man who was so engaged, so busy, so witty, so funny, so wise, and so incredibly principled.
Joseph Shabalala has been honored for his contribution to the South African music industry. A statue in his honor was unveiled during an annual gala dinner in Ladysmith.
The shot of the day, however, belonged to American Daniel Berger, who chipped in for an eagle on the par 4 fifth hole.
For all your news updates, stay on Primetime News every Saturday and Sunday from 6 p.m.
Today is World Environment Day, and this year the global environmental organizations are encouraging people to reconnect with nature. However, with one of the worst droughts the African continent has ever faced, the importance of water and taking care of our natural environment has never been more vital. In recent years, we've also witnessed the wildlife poaching statistics increase significantly. And now one of the largest countries and polluters in the world, the United States, have just announced that they are pulling out of the Paris Accord. This aims to prevent global warming and other massive environmental catastrophes. Do we no longer care about connecting and protecting nature and its precious wildlife? Here to talk about the importance of this day, as well as giving us some updates on all things Rhino, award-winning television wildlife presenter and filmmaker, Bonnet de Bod. Morning, Bonnet. Nice to have you with us.
Yeah, good morning, Eben.
It's quite a rap we're giving you now.
I like that introduction. Thank you very much.
Seriously, though, I want to start and cut to the chase because I think everyone who cares about the environment was really shocked with the attitude displayed by Donald Trump in America when pulling out of the Paris Accord last week. But it's a real setback for those of us that want to save the planet for future generations.
Right. So let's talk about today. You know, I always find it very strange that we have to have a day to remember the environment. You know, and it's such an important day where we can really refocus the mind to take forward the call to protect the earth that we all share. You know, and it really invites us to think about how we are part of nature and how we depend on it, because I do think we tend to forget that sometimes. Now, the theme for today is connecting people to nature, which I think is very appropriate. You mentioned what happened now in the United States with Donald Trump not agreeing to this agreement, the Paris Agreement. So I think it's important for us today to just appreciate the environment and the beauty that is still left on our planet. So I will be taking time out later today from the edit suite to take a walk in one of our city's parks with my dog and just appreciate the environment and which we find all around us, really. So for those of you who are watching, you know, give a thought to nature today, or just go out, take a couple of minutes out of the office and appreciate the environment. But pretty shocking what happened with Donald Trump pulling out.
Yeah, it is, and it's a major setback for everyone that cares about the environment. But your field of expertise, let's talk about rhinos quickly, because it's almost like they're becoming more and more brazen, the poachers. We've seen what happened at Imfolozi Game Reserve with the poaching of a mother in a holding area.
Right. Very shocking. I think people were very outraged, and I think many people are asking the question, how did this happen? As soon as the news broke, in fact, people were taking to social media to vent their anger. Thousands of people commenting and sharing this incredibly shocking and sad news. You know, Eben, I think the ironic part for me is that this happened in a supposedly secure location at the home of the white rhino, the very place where the white rhino was brought back from the brink of extinction in the 1960s. Now, I did the last interview with Dr. Ian Player there at the Bomas, and he was just so incredibly proud of the history those Bomas held. So just very sad that this had to happen. Now, this mother and calf you referred to, they were part of the wild rhinos that were auctioned, captured and auctioned at the Ezemvelo KZN Wildlife's annual auction, and they were sold as a unit for 520,000 rand. But People are asking, you know, I've been to those bomas many times, as I've mentioned, also over 2 auctions, and the security has always been tight, you know, with armed guards and video cameras.
Inside job then, is that what it smells like?
We have to ask the security question. You know, I don't know if you saw the news reports that came out. They said that Ezemvelo did not give comment. I then contacted the spokesperson. They said they did give comment. And then they emailed me a formal statement outlining as to how this happened in more detail. Basically, 4 armed poachers, heavily armed poachers, disabled 2 security guards that were on the night shift. They were tied up, told to lie down, and then their firearm, radio and a panic button were taken from them before these guys moved in to kill and shoot this mother and calf.
The question that concerns me, and maybe it's a thing that I think we have to extend to everybody, is that can we still trust everyone that's looking after our rhinos? Because a lot of the rhino crime seems to be very close to rhinos themselves.
That's a very important question to ask. You know, I think what we must remember is that there are many people on the ground doing amazing work. We can't generalize. But corruption has infiltrated throughout the system, like in any other industry, basically. What I find very interesting is the fact that if you look at the protection for this mother and calf, I mean, it's R500,000, you know, despite the other animals in the bomas that were auctioned off. The auction brought in 88 million rand. So people on Facebook are commenting about the lack of protection for these valuable animals, asking how can 2 security guards be responsible for millions of rands worth of wild animals, especially with the carnage happening in KZN lately. So I think what has upset people the most is the fact that this mother and calf were wild rhinos. They couldn't run anywhere. They were held captive in a boma at the mercy of the poachers. So we should have done more to protect them. They were basically sitting ducks.
How were they killed?
They were shot. They were shot. The mother's horn was removed. The baby obviously was also shot and killed, but the horn was still intact.
I don't understand that, honestly. Anyhow, the statistics are not getting any better or worse. I don't know how to view the statistics anymore, to be honest with you. But what does the picture look like now?
Well, like you also said earlier, it's becoming more and more apparent that poachers are getting bolder. You mentioned the Tula rehab attack. Now, this incident, it has certainly taken rhino poaching to a whole new level. Now, you're asking the question, how do we change things around? I always say change is a big word, especially when what we are doing doesn't seem to be working. Now, the Kruger Rangers must be thrilled that their work is really paying off, you know, bringing down the poaching numbers in the park. But those in KZN say that because the grip has tightened in Mpumalanga, these criminal syndicates are moving there. They lost 23 rhinos in 12 days at the Sishlui and Mfolozi Reserve. So far this year, 100 rhinos have been poached in KZN, 80% coming from the home of the white rhino. We are dealing with triple figures now, and this is from January up to May.
It shows a level of sophistication with these syndicates, as you call them. It seems as if they target the weaknesses in the system, and that shows a level of sophistication that must be concerning.
Absolutely. So we change one aspect with some success, and it brings chaos somewhere else. What we must remember, rhino poaching, like any other wildlife crime, is a sophisticated, organized criminal activity. It's deeply rooted, yet ever-changing. And it takes advantage of those secretive set structures that we put in place. And that's how we have to approach it. We have to disrupt those networks.
We've seen concerning this weekend also the lions who came to retire in South Africa, the circus lions. 2 of them were killed over the weekend, and it's World Environmental Day today. So how should we get our heads around this day with these kinds of things happening?
You know, we have to again refocus our mind and our responsibility as humanity on this planet. We only have one. You know, there's no planet B. So either we look after it and it is our responsibility, or, well, what are we going to do in 10, 20, 30 years from now? So let's not get to that place. Let's all play our part individually as organizations and you know, make this day what it should be, celebrating our environment.
Bonnie, thank you very much for being with us today. Bonnie Deport, award-winning wildlife television presenter and filmmaker, joining us periodically on the Newsroom show to talk about all things wildlife. Today is World Environmental Day, and what she said a little bit earlier is quite apt, I think. Go out and interact with nature today. Go and have a look at the beautiful colours at this time of year, especially in our parks in and around the big cities. Now, Nigeria is fighting against the worst meningitis outbreak since 2008. At that time, the outbreak claimed about 839 lives across Nigeria, and now about 9,700 cases of meningitis have been reported since the end of April this year. Nigeria is also experiencing a meningitis outbreak, which has claimed 179 lives out of 3,000 recorded cases, mainly in the west of the country. Now, Doctors Without Borders, or Médecins Sans Frontières, are supporting the Ministries of Health in both countries with surveillance, case management and the vaccination of more than 740,000 people in both countries. Now, for the latest on the ground, via Skype, we are joined by Miriam Alia Prieto, Vaccination and Outbreak Response Advisor of the Meningitis Focal Point. A very good morning to you, Miriam. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Miriam, just give us an idea, how bad is the outbreak that we're seeing in both countries right now?
So this outbreak is the worst from 2009. In 2009, we have the last big outbreak of meningitis A with more than 55,000 cases only in Nigeria. And this outbreak is the worst from this big outbreak in 2009. And the difference is that in this case it's meningitis C mainly, and it's in 2009 with Chad, Niger, and Nigeria. This year is Nigeria mainly, but also Niger has 3,000 cases.
Why is this region so vulnerable to meningitis outbreaks, and how many people are you vaccinating there every week?
So the region is, the meningitis belt is covering from Senegal to Ethiopia. It's very linked with the weather conditions. So in the time of Harmattan, when it's very hot and dry, is the moment that the transmission is easier. So it's every year we have cases of meningitis during the full year. In this season is when you have more risk to have outbreaks. And the problem is that these outbreaks have different serotypes. So it's very difficult to prevent this outbreak because you need a vaccine to cover all the serotypes, which is not available. And in this case, we have been vaccinated with different teams and in both countries. And just to give one example, only one team can do like 1,000 people vaccinated per day.
Why don't we create, or why don't we produce enough vaccines around the world to deal with the problem of meningitis?
Has been developed more than 10 years ago, and to all the meningitis babies. So more than 250 million people have been vaccinated. The problem is it's only covering meningitis babies. For the rest of serotypes, there is not enough vaccine. There is one vaccine in investigation.
Well, unfortunately, we apologize for the breakup in that link. Unfortunately, it looks as if Skype dropped the sound, and it's just not much that you can do. I was talking to Miriam Alia Prieto, who's the Vaccination and Outbreak Response Advisor with regards to the meningitis focal point in that country. We're going to take a short commercial break. When we come back, Kendall Mahamati will take you to the end of the show with the sport. I will see you again tomorrow. Goodbye.
Africa is getting more and more digitized, and people have to navigate through an increasingly connected world.
I did call my bay over here.
At school, I use my Wi-Fi. On Network, we tell you about Africa's technology and social media landscape.
Politicians already do use Twitter a lot.
It's both Android and iOS compatible.
A solar-charged box that includes everything, the computer, the projector.
That's Network with Ms. Phumelele Zondi every Sunday at 9 p.m.
Do you support the calls made by Blayton Nzimande and Solly Mapaila?
It is not a call by Comrade Solly Mapaila and the Comrade Blayton Nzimande. It is the position of the party.
Yes.
And the position of the party, we support it unambiguously.
Why?
The theory of the revolution, in simple terms, was that revolutionary forces are going to take charge of the state. And having taken charge of the state, they are going to transform the state to eventually transform society.
Join me in Port Sedu live every Monday to Thursday at 17:30.
Welcome back. It's 21 minutes before midday on this beautiful Monday morning. My name is Kendall Makamate, and of course I've got the sports for you after the cracker of a weekend, back-to-back and full of thrills the entire weekend. We start off with a story about how local hero Bongmusa Mthembu destroyed the field in the uprun Comrades Marathon to win his second Comrades Marathon title. This after winning the down run to Durban in 2014. He becomes only the second South African after the legendary Bruce Fordyce to win 2 titles.
South Africa's Charles Gianne took early control in the 86.7-kilometer run, charging through the halfway point at Drummond, nearly 2 minutes clear of a large chasing group. Gianne was eventually caught to 22 kilometers to go. Amongst those in the chasing pack was last year's down-run champ David Khatebe and the man who was to win his race, Bongmusa Mthembu. Mthembu gradually dropped the opposition by the wayside. One by one they fell as the Pietermaritzburg native made his way home. With less than 10 kilometers to go, and with the infamous Polyshores climb approaching, Mthembu made his move and he never looked back. He held on to secure victory in 5 hours, 35 minutes and 34 seconds. And while he was 11 minutes outside the uprun record, he finished more than 3 minutes ahead of Zimbabwean athlete Atiwanda Nyamande, who took second place nearly 3 minutes later, and Gift Kalehe, who made up the podium, coming home 6 minutes later. Mthembu, who won the Comrades Down in 2014 and back silver at the 100-kilometer World Championships last year, becomes the first South African man in 27 years to win the prestigious annual race more than once. Meanwhile, in the women's run, American athlete Camilla Herron had no problems in bagging her maiden Comrades title. She missed out on 2 previous attempts of the race due to illness and injury. Despite having stopped before the line believing she had finished, she went on to take victory in 6 hours, 27 minutes and 35 seconds. Russian athlete Alexandra Morozova pushed hard to grab second spot 4 minutes later. Last year's down run winner, Shanae Bosman, struggled with a groin injury, but she held on to finish third in 6 hours, 39 minutes and 51 seconds and was the first South African woman home. Tabiso Sitole, SABC News.
Now, heroes, all of them right there. Now, Platinum Stars were roundly thrashed by Tunisian side CS Sfaxien by 3-0 in Tunisia in their CAF Confederations Cup Group E encounter, leaving them languishing at the bottom of the group. All this as SuperSport United overturned a 2-goal deficit to secure a 2-2 draw in a crucial Group D tie against Congolese giants TP Mazembe. United, who made a dramatic comeback in a packed Lubumbashi stadium, were roundly applauded by local fans for their fighting spirit. They now top the group with 5 points.
This was a crucial match for both TP Mazembe and SuperSport United to win. It was a top-of-the-log clash, and a win will see either of the teams top the log in Group D. Before this match, both teams had 4 points. SuperSport, who scored 7 goals, was second on the log, followed by Mazembe, who scored 3. However, Horoya of Guinea, who drew 1-1 against CF Monana of Gabon, topped the log with 5 points. Mazembe, led 2-1 at half-time. In the second half, SuperSport put pressure on Mazembe and their defense looked shaky. Finally, Matsatsantsa were rewarded when sensational player Tebogo Mokoena scored a free header to level the scores. Matsatsantsa drew 2-2 against Horoya in the opening match. In their second match, they beat Monana in their own backyard. The match against Mazembe helped them to consolidate their position at the top with 5 points. Tabashiba, SABC News.
Now, South Africa has advanced to the semi-finals of the World Rugby Under-20 Championships with a game to spare after a 38-14 win over the hosts Georgia. The much-changed Junior Springboks had to win their second Pool C match after drawing 23-all with France in their opening match on Wednesday. The semi-finals are scheduled for the 13th of June and the final will be played on the 18th of June.
Junior Springbok coach Shanru made 9 changes to the team that faced Georgia in their second World Rugby Under-20 Championship match. The Junior Springboks needed a win before facing Argentina in their final round-robin match on Thursday. The 2012 champions were expected to walk all over the hosts, but this proved to be a very difficult match. The first try only came in the 17th minute, but Georgia leveled the score in the 30th minute. After a frustrating opening 30 minutes, Wandisiles Melani produced magic when he scored a brilliant try. South Africa led 19-7 at the break after Mani Libok scored another try. The Junior Springboks showed their true class in the second half, with Yao Pengle, Simelani and Libok scoring 3 more tries to hand South Africa a 38-14 victory. Meanwhile, France beat Argentina 26-25 in a closely contested match to progress to the semi-finals. Argentina led 25-21 before there was a late drama to end a superb game of rugby. France made the most of their man advantage and stole the win at the death, with Hugo Boniface getting his second try of the match. Pool B leaders New Zealand booked themselves a place in the semi-finals after an emphatic 68-26 win over Italy. The Italians started the match like a house on fire when they scored an early try in the second minute after a solo effort by Simeone Corneli. But the young All Blacks never panicked but rallied back, imposing themselves in a match and led 39-21 at the break. Sfeso Ramara, SABC News.
Now to the world of tennis, where defending women's champion 4th seed Gabin Muguruza of Spain has been dumped out of the French Open by 13th seed local Kristina Mladenovic. It took Mladenovic 3 sets to blow the women's draw wide open. Meanwhile, 4th seeded Spaniard Rafael Nadal remains on track to reach a 10th French Open final in Paris.
Muguruza initially struggled against French favourite Mladenovic. Mladenovic was in sublime form in the first set, needing just 28 minutes to win it 6-1. The Spaniard, however, upped the level of her game significantly in the second set. Mladenovic committed most of the unforced errors, and the Spaniard finally bagged it 6-3. But Mladenovic secured the early break in the decider and never looked back. Although she struggled with her serve, Mladenovic held on to bag it 6-3 and advanced to a Grand Slam quarterfinal for the second time in her career.
Quarterfinal here at Roland Garros for her in the singles. She's knocked out the defending champion Gabin Muguruza.
Nadal, meanwhile, was very impressive against compatriot Roberto Bautista Agut and showed just why he is regarded the title favourite in Paris. Nadal raced through the sets as Bautista Agut struggled to counter Nadal's attacking play. The 9-time champion finally needed less than 2 hours to record a 6-1, 6-2, 6-2 win and advance to the quarterfinals. Elsewhere, 5th seed Milos Raonic of Canada was sent packing in the 4th round. Another Spaniard, 20th seed Pablo Carreño Busta, upset Raonic in 5 sets. But Ukrainian 5th seed Elina Svitolina went through to the 4th round in Paris for the 3rd time. Svitolina beat Poland's Magdalena 6-4, 7-5 to set up a last 16 meeting with Petra Martic of Croatia. Liesel Zankel, SABC News.
Now, with that said, of course, there's going to be tennis throughout the entire day today. And we know that Simona Halep, as well as Svitolina, as we just heard, will be trying to make sure that they win their matches to set up a date against each other to see who's going to win. That's where we leave it with the sport. Thanks very much for having joined us. We'll be back tomorrow morning with the entire team once again, 9 a.m. till midday and on Newsroom. And until tomorrow then, have yourselves a great day. We leave you with the weather forecast.